Picture the Earth wrapped in the velvet darkness of space. Above it hangs a pale lantern, steady and unblinking, casting a glow that has shaped every ocean tide, every creature that walks, and every story humanity has ever told. The moon, it seems so familiar. We see it in children's drawings, in ancient carvings, in the myths of every civilization that has ever gazed skyward. And yet, beneath its serene presence lies a mystery so vast that it unsettles even the most disciplined of minds. For billions of years, the moon has circled Earth with an almost mathematical perfection. Its orbit stabilizes our planet's tilt. Its pull stirs the seas, sculpting coastlines and feeding ecosystems. Its light has guided migrations, marked calendars, and inspired poets. Without it, Earth would be a very different world, perhaps one in which complex life never flourished. But what if this glowing sentinel is not what it appears to be? What if the moon is not a natural companion, born from cosmic chance, but a deliberate construction, a design? For centuries, astronomers and philosophers had debated its origins. Some argued it was captured by Earth's gravity, a wandering body trapped in orbit. Others believed it split off from the Earth itself, torn free in some violent birth. Modern science leans toward the giant impact hypothesis, a collision billions of years ago that birthed our strange, oversized satellite. Yet the deeper we look, the more the moon resists explanation. Its size, its position, its influence all are so precise, so unlikely, that a troubling thought arises. Could it have been placed there, long before we ever walked the Earth? Consider this. The moon is about 400 times smaller than the sun. Yet, it also happens to be about 400 times closer. The result is the perfect alignment that gives us solar eclipses, where the moon's disk covers the sun with uncanny precision. A coincidence so rare it borders on design. Consider also its orbit, locked so perfectly that only one face ever looks upon Earth. A silent mask, hiding an entire hemisphere from human eyes until the 20th century. And consider its density. Not quite what we'd expect from a solid rocky body. Lighter in the middle, almost hollow. Imagine for a moment the moon not as a lifeless sphere, but as a structure. A hollowed shell, perhaps armored, perhaps ancient. Its surface scarred by impacts, its craters a camouflage of natural chaos. Inside, vast chambers, machinery, maybe even records left by hands or minds that vanished long before our species began. The idea sounds like science fiction, and yet this very speculation has appeared again and again, whispered in the margins of both science and myth. Ancient cultures left curious traces. Some myths suggest there was a time before the moon existed in the sky. Others spoke of it as an egg, a lantern, even a vessel. What did they see? What memory, real or imagined, survives in their words? Meanwhile, modern science has added its own fuel to the mystery. Seismic experiments on the lunar surface have revealed vibrations so strange that NASA scientists once remarked the moon seemed to ring like a bell. A solid body should not behave this way. Could it be hollow or partly artificial? The moon watches, indifferent, as humanity speculates below. It has watched continents drift and ice ages come and go. It has seen every civilization rise, burn, and fade into dust. And always it remains its face unchanging, its orbit precise, its silence unbroken. If the moon is a natural child of cosmic chance, then it is one of the greatest coincidences in the universe. If it is not, then it is a construct of staggering intention. And so the question lingers, heavy and unsettling. What if the moon were never meant to be simply a moon, but a message, a machine, or a monument left in place for reasons we have yet to understand? As night falls across the Earth, the moon rises again, indifferent to our wonder, our questions, and our ignorance. But the first chapter of this mystery has only begun. To understand what the moon truly is, we must return to the beginning, to the violent, uncertain story of its birth. The mystery of the moon begins, as so many stories in science do, with an attempt to explain origins. If the moon is not an artificial creation, then it must have a natural history, an origin story written in the language of cosmic violence and celestial chance. Scientists, for centuries, have wrestled with this question. Where did the moon come from? 3 great hypotheses rose to prominence. Each one is elegant in its own way. Each one is incomplete. It is the story most widely accepted today, the tale written into textbooks, the narrative children learn in school. According to this idea, 4.5 billion years ago, when the Earth itself was still molten and raw, wandering body the size of Mars struck our young planet. The collision was unimaginably violent. Mountains melted. Oceans of magma exploded skyward. From the wreckage, debris sprayed into orbit, a glowing ring of molten rock circling the wounded Earth. Over time, these fragments gathered, coalesced, and formed a single companion, the moon. The theory solves certain puzzles well. It explains why Earth and Moon share similar isotopic fingerprints, almost as if they were born of the same flesh. It explains the moon's unusually low iron content, as most of the heavy core of that impactor would have merged with Earth, leaving behind a lighter, more silicate-rich core. But the theory is not perfect. Some models suggest the moon should be made mostly of the other body's material, not Earth's. And yet, the chemistry is almost identical. Too identical, some argue, for a chaotic collision. How could such violence create such precision? Another vision proposes that the Earth and Moon were twins, born together from the same disk of dust and gas that surrounded the infant sun. 2 siblings, slowly accreting side by side, sharing the same raw material. This idea neatly explains their chemical kinship. If Earth and Moon grew up together, their isotopes should indeed be almost identical. But the trouble lies in mass. If the moon had formed this way, it should have ended up much larger in comparison to Earth, more like the other great moons of the solar system, those of Jupiter and Saturn. Instead, our moon is disproportionately small, yet still far larger, relative to its planet, than any other satellite we know. Too big to be a simple twin, too small to be a true co-equal. The math resists this story. The gravitational equations don't add up. A third possibility suggests the moon was born elsewhere in the solar system, wandering free until Earth's gravity caught hold. The image is cinematic, a rogue body drifting through the darkness, pulled suddenly into orbit by Earth's invisible hand. Some aspects fit. It could explain why the moon is so large compared to its host if it began life independently. It could even account for its unusual density and internal structure. But the odds are astronomical. For a body that size to be captured, the conditions would need to be impossibly precise. It would have had to lose vast amounts of energy during the encounter, or else it would simply slingshot away, a visitor instead of a prisoner. Physics does not easily allow such accidents. The capture theory lingers on the margins of plausibility. And so, the mainstream stands at a crossroads. Each model holds truths. Each model holds flaws. The giant impact theory remains the favorite, but it is haunted by inconsistencies, too many to rest easy. The co-formation theory solves some problems, but creates others. The capture theory sparkles with imagination, but bends under the weight of improbability. The moon, it seems, is not eager to reveal its secrets. Meanwhile, astronomers have pointed out something stranger still. No other planet in the solar system has a moon quite like ours. Mars has 2 satellites tiny, irregular, more like captured asteroids than true moons. Jupiter has dozens, great and small, locked in a grand ballet of gravity. Saturn, too, has a retinue of icy companions. But none are remotely proportional to their planet in the way Earth's moon is. Relative to Earth, the moon is immense. So immense, in fact, that some astronomers argue Earth and Moon should be classified as a double planet, not a planet and its satellite. Why does Earth alone possess such an anomaly? If the Moon were purely a product of chance, of blind collisions and chaotic accretion, then it is one of the most unlikely coincidences in cosmic history. The alignment, the proportions, the chemistry, all strain against randomness. This is where mainstream theories falter, not in their imagination, but in their completeness. They describe pieces of the puzzle, fragments of possibility, but not the whole. Consider the words of planetary scientist Robin Knopp, one of the foremost researchers of the giant impact hypothesis. She once remarked that while the theory fits much of the evidence, it cannot, on its own, explain the near-identical isotopes of Earth and Moon. Unless, she suggested, the impact was so perfectly mixed that the Moon and Earth became indistinguishable. But how likely is perfection born of catastrophe? The Moon does not answer. It drifts above, aloof and silent, as theories rise and fall beneath it. Humanity builds stories of molten seas, twin births, and captured wanderers. Each one is elegant. Each one is fragile. And always, the Moon remains. In the cold language of science, the Moon is an unsolved problem. In the whispered language of myth, it is something more a reminder that origins may not always be as they seem. If none of the natural stories fully satisfy, if all fall short in subtle but troubling ways, then the door remains open. Another possibility, strange and unsettling, waits in the shadows. But before we step into speculation, before we consider the unthinkable, we must pause on the cracks in the story, the anomalies that hint that something is missing. For in science, as in mystery, it is the cracks that let the light in. The Moon seems, at first glance, to be a simple companion, a dead rock circling endlessly, a pale ornament against the stars. But when examined more closely, when measured, weighed, and charted, its story begins to fracture. Science is built upon consistency, upon patterns that reveal themselves in the numbers. But the Moon resists such neatness. It holds within it puzzles that do not align with natural expectations. And in those puzzles, in those cracks, lies the uneasy possibility that something is profoundly amiss. When Apollo missions brought back lunar samples, scientists compared them to Earth's crust. Chemically, they were almost twins, the same isotopes, the same elements. But when the Moon's mass was calculated, it was strangely light. Its average density is about 3.3 grams per cubic centimeter. Earth's is 5.5. On the surface, this may seem like a small distinction, but in planetary science, such differences are vast. It means the Moon lacks a heavy, iron-rich core. Unlike Earth, which hides a sphere of molten metal at its heart, the Moon seems to be hollowed of such weight. Seismic readings added to the mystery. When NASA astronauts triggered artificial impacts by crashing spent modules into the surface, the Moon reverberated in ways that no solid bodies should. For long minutes, even hours, vibrations rang through its structure. A behavior so unusual that one NASA scientist described it as if the Moon were ringing like a bell. If it is solid, why does it echo? If it is natural, why does it behave as though hollow? The Moon is large, strangely large. In fact, relative to the Earth, it is the biggest moon in the solar system. Other planets host moons, but none so massive compared to their parent. Jupiter, the giant, has Ganymede, Callisto, Europa, and Io, each impressive, but dwarfed by the planet itself. Saturn's Titan is massive too, yet Saturn overwhelms it. Mars has Phobos and Deimos, but they are pebbles beside their world. Only Earth stands apart. The Moon is 1/4 the size of its host. By all rights, our planet should not possess such a companion. Planetary formation models struggle to explain this imbalance. Too large to be dismissed as ordinary, too perfectly matched to be random. It is almost as if Earth and Moon form a binary pair, a double planet bound together, a partnership that should not exist by chance alone. Then there is the orbit. The moon is tidally locked, meaning it rotates on its axis in perfect synchrony with its orbit. The result: one face always gazes toward Earth, while the other is forever hidden. The far side remained unseen until a spacecraft circled it in the 20th century. This arrangement is not unheard of. Tidal locking happens elsewhere in the cosmos. Yet the precision of the lock, the length of time it has endured, and the stability of the orbit are remarkable. And there is more. The moon's path is almost a perfect circle, its eccentricity unusually small. It hovers at just the right distance to influence tides, to stabilize Earth's tilt, and to create total eclipses of breathtaking precision. If it were slightly closer, it would crash into Earth. Slightly farther, and eclipses would vanish. Slightly less massive, and Earth's tilt would wobble, producing violent climate swings. It sits in what seems to be an impossible sweet spot, a position that appears less like a coincidence and more like placement. When Apollo samples were studied, another puzzle emerged. The moon's crust is enriched with refractory elements, materials resistant to heat, such as titanium and aluminum. In some regions, titanium content is so high that engineers have marveled at its abundance. On Earth, titanium is rare, expensive, and difficult to refine. On the moon, it seems oddly common, embedded in the soil. Some researchers quietly wondered, what purpose might such materials serve in abundance? In construction, in reinforcement, in something more deliberate? Dating the moon's rocks revealed another paradox. Some samples appeared older than the oldest Earth rocks, fragments that seemed to predate our planet's crust, hinting at origins beyond Earth itself. If the moon were born from Earth's collision, how could its stones be older than the Earth's surface? If it co-formed, why do the ages diverge in strange and inconsistent ways? The story refuses to settle. Perhaps the most haunting anomaly of all is mathematical. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. It is also, by extraordinary coincidence, 400 times closer. This perfect ratio is what creates solar eclipses, the moon covering the sun with exquisite precision. No other body in our solar system produces such symmetry. No other planet enjoys this spectacle. It is unique to Earth. Astronomers call it a coincidence. Statisticians call it improbable. Others, quietly, call it design. For every anomaly, mainstream science proposes explanations. Perhaps the crust's titanium is a quirk of volcanism. Perhaps the density is simply what remains of a stripped core. Perhaps orbital stability is the inevitable outcome of billions of years. But these are patches, not resolutions. Each answer breeds another question. Each explanation feels provisional, as if the puzzle remains unsolved. Some scientists admit it openly. The moon, they say, is an odd duck, a satellite that should not exist in its current form, a cosmic riddle wrapped in ordinary stone. Together, these anomalies sketch a troubling portrait, a body too light for its size, too large for its planet, too stable in its orbit, too perfect in its proportions. The moon is not behaving as a natural object should. Its very existence strains the limits of probability. And so the cracks in the story widen. The safe, conventional explanations begin to wobble. And into those spaces of uncertainty step whispers, ideas considered fringe, theories dismissed as fantastical. But history teaches us that sometimes the most unsettling ideas grow from the smallest cracks in certainty. As the moon drifts across the night sky, silent and pale, its face betrays nothing. Yet beneath its surface lies a mystery that defies the neatness of scientific models. If the moon is not what it appears, then what is it? A natural body shaped by improbable accidents? Or something else, something constructed, positioned, and maintained for reasons beyond our understanding? To answer, we must look not only at science, but at stories. At memory, at myth, at the voices of the ancient world who gazed at the same moon and saw something different. Centuries before telescopes, before rockets, before seismic sensors, ancient eyes watched the moon, and some whispered that there was a time before it ever appeared. Long before rockets, long before telescopes, long before the language of science was ever spoken, there were stories. Human beings have always looked upward into the silence of the night sky and found not emptiness, but meaning. The heavens were a canvas, the stars a script, the moon a constant companion. Or was it? For buried in the myths of the ancient world are whispers of something extraordinary. Whispers of a time before the moon. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the moon was worshipped as a god. The Sumerians named him Nana, the Akkadians Sin, the Babylonians Suin. His phases marked the passage of months. His light guided agriculture and ritual. But alongside this reverence came strange tales. Some texts suggest that the moon had a beginning, a sudden arrival, rather than an eternal presence. The Zulu of Africa, too, tell a story of the moon being brought into place, rolled across the sky by ancient beings. How could cultures separated by continents share such an idea? Was it pure imagination or memory of something seen? In Greece, an even stranger echo survives. The historian Aristotle mentioned a people known as the Proselynes, literally, those who lived before the moon. They dwelled in the mountainous region of Arcadia, a land already ancient when classical Greece was young. The poet Apollonius of Rhodes also wrote of them, describing how the Arcadians were older than the moon itself. Their legends insisted that their ancestors walked the earth in a time when the skies were moonless, lit only by stars and the blazing sun. To modern ears, it sounds impossible. Yet here, preserved in Greek memory, is a tradition of a world without a moon. Among the Zulu people, stories speak of two brothers who hurled the moon into the sky. In their telling, the moon was once a fiery, glowing egg stolen from a great beast. The brothers split it and flung it upward, where it came to rest, casting its cool white light over the earth. This was not the story of a natural birth, but of placement, of deliberate action. A tale of the moon being installed, like a lamp in the heavens. In the ancient Vedic texts of India, there are references to a time when there were only two heavenly lights, the sun and the stars. Later, the moon is introduced, associated with Soma, a divine essence tied to fertility, ritual, and the cycle of life. The moon, in these stories, is not eternal. It arrives. It is added. And with its arrival, the rhythm of existence changes forever. Across the ocean, the Maya spoke of the moon as a goddess, Ixchel, tied to fertility, weaving, and cycles of birth. The Aztecs, too, told of the moon being dismembered and placed into the sky, a sacrifice made to balance the sun. Here again, the moon is not simply there. It is put there through drama, through divine intention. Taken individually, such myths can be dismissed as metaphor, as allegory. But taken together, they form a curious pattern. Mesopotamian tablets, Greek poets, African oral traditions, Indian hymns, Mesoamerican codices all whisper of a time before the moon, or of its deliberate arrival. It is a motif that stretches across continents and millennia. Why? Skeptics argue that these are poetic inventions, metaphors for fertility, for the passage of time, for the human condition. And certainly, myth is layered with symbol. But others suggest something more provocative. Could these tales be fragments of memory cultural echoes of a prehistoric sky before the moon settled into orbit? Geologists know that the Earth is billions of years old and that the moon has circled it for most of that time. But human memory, encoded in story, may stretch further than we imagine. Myths, after all, have preserved memories of great floods, volcanic eruptions, even shifting coastlines events now confirmed by science. Could they also preserve a memory of the moon's sudden presence? Consider the psychological weight of the moon. Its cycles guide tides, fertility, even dreams. To imagine a time before it, an Earth without its glow feels alien. And yet, some ancient voices insist that such a time existed. If they were right, even in metaphor, what would it mean? That the moon's arrival was not simply natural, but transformative. It was an event so significant it reshaped culture, biology, and belief. When the ancients told of gods placing the moon, were they speaking in metaphor or describing what they believed to be true? If the moon were once absent and then suddenly present, it would not only explain these stories, it would elevate the moon from companion to overseer, a watchful lantern hung in the sky. Perhaps that is why so many cultures gave it divine status, not simply because of its beauty, but because of the unspoken sense that it was given, not born. The myths do not answer with certainty. They are fragments, whispers, poetry. Yet they invite us to pause, to wonder whether the cracks in science are mirrored by echoes in story. As the moon drifts above, indifferent and pale, it carries with it both data and dream. Science measures its mass and orbit. Myth remembers its absence and arrival. Between them, a question lingers, heavy and haunting. Were the ancients imagining? Or were they remembering something we have long forgotten? To probe further, we must leave the comfort of myth and return to the unsettling evidence from modern exploration. When men first touched the lunar surface, they found more than dust and rock. They found anomalies so strange that whispers of the impossible began to creep into official reports. And among those anomalies, one stands apart: the suggestion that the moon may not be solid at all, but hollow. The astronauts had barely begun to explore the lunar surface when the moon answered back. And what it revealed was not silence, not stillness, but music. It was November 1969. Apollo 12 had touched down on the ocean of storms. After completing their mission, the astronauts deliberately crashed the ascent stage of their lunar module into the surface, about 40 miles away. Instruments left behind by Apollo 11 detected the impact. What came next stunned mission control. The moon reverberated. For nearly an hour, the seismic instruments recorded vibrations, as if the entire body of the moon were ringing like a bell. Seismologists were baffled. On Earth, earthquakes tend to dampen out within minutes. Energy is absorbed by water, atmosphere, and the planet's layered interior. But the moon was dry, rigid, and seemingly uniform in ways that made seismic waves travel farther and longer. The first impact lasted for 55 minutes. Later missions repeated the experiment with even larger impacts. Apollo 13, a Saturn IV booster, was sent crashing into the moon with the force of 11 tons of TNT. The result? The moon rang for more than 3 hours. These weren't small tremors. They were deep, resonant quakes that suggested a structure very different from Earth's. It was NASA scientists themselves who used the phrase, "the moon rang like a bell." Of course, they did not mean it literally. It was a metaphor for the long-lasting reverberations. But the phrase captured imaginations, and once spoken, it could not be unsaid. A bell rings because it is hollow, because sound waves resonate through its cavity. Could the same be true of the moon? The idea sounds absurd at first. A hollow celestial body? How could something like that form naturally? Yet the Apollo seismic data gave fuel to one of the strangest theories in modern science, that the moon is not a solid satellite at all, but a constructed shell, perhaps even an artifact. Proponents of the hollow moon hypothesis argue that the moon's peculiar behavior under impact, its low density, and its unique orbit all hint at an unnatural origin, that it might be less of a world and more of a vessel. One of the strangest aspects of the moon is its density. On average, it is about 60% as dense as Earth. For its size, it is surprisingly light. Even stranger, the distribution of this density seems inconsistent. Some regions appear to have dense material beneath them, while others are suspiciously thin. Seismologists detected what they call maskins, or mass concentrations localized areas of higher density buried beneath lunar basins. These anomalies deflect spacecraft orbits, as if chunks of something unusually heavy were hidden beneath the surface. But between these maskins, other regions appear far lighter, almost empty. Could it be voids, caverns, or something more structured? When engineers hear of a structure that rings, they think of resonance in manufactured objects. Bells, gongs, even metallic hulls of ships. The analogy, however imperfect, stirred imaginations. What if the moon is less like a rock, and more like a colossal construct? A shell, encasing something within or nothing at all. Science fiction has long flirted with this idea. From H.G. Wells' The First Men in the Moon, with its cavernous lunar interior, to modern theories of megastructures, the hollow moon taps into a primal fascination. The possibility that the night's companion is a machine, not a mountain. In 1970, two Soviet scientists, Mikhail Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, published a bold paper in Sputnik magazine. Their claim was extraordinary. The moon, they suggested, might be a hollowed-out planetoid, engineered by an unknown intelligence in deep antiquity. They pointed to the same anomalies NASA had noticed: the ringing quakes, the shallow craters, the odd density distribution. They described the moon as a kind of massive space station, an ark set in orbit to watch over Earth. At the time, the article was dismissed as pseudoscience, but it never disappeared. Instead, it became one of the cornerstones of alternative lunar theories. One detail that intrigued both mainstream and fringe researchers alike was the depth of lunar craters. On Earth, an impact crater can be incredibly deep, its depth proportional to the size of the impactor. But on the moon, even massive impacts seem oddly shallow. It is as if something beneath the surface resists penetration, like a hard shell lying just under a thin layer of dust and rock. Some scientists attributed this to differences in crust and geology. Others wondered, was there a barrier, perhaps artificial, protecting an interior? Skeptics argue that the ringing moon can be explained by its dryness. Without water to dampen seismic waves, and with a more rigid interior, vibrations would last much longer than on Earth. This, they say, is a natural consequence of lunar geology, not evidence of hollowness. And yet not all questions are answered. The data remains unusual. The moon is not quite like any other body we have studied. For those who lean toward mystery, the hollow moon hypothesis is not just science, it is a symbol. It plays into the idea of the moon as a lantern placed in the sky, a watchful eye, perhaps even an artifact left behind by something greater. What better way to monitor a young Earth than by setting a beacon in its orbit? A beacon disguised as natural, yet carrying within it the hollowness of design? Mainstream science does not accept the hollow moon hypothesis. No convincing evidence exists to suggest artificiality. Apollo samples, orbital studies, and modern probes all point to a body shaped by natural forces. And yet, the anomalies remain. The ringing, the shallow craters, the curious density. Together, they form a puzzle that science acknowledges, but has not fully explained. So we return to the image of November 1969, when the moon shuddered under the blow of a human machine. And instead of silence, it sang. A sound carried not through air, but through stone. A sound that made the moon seem less like a dead rock, and more like a bell, a vessel, a construct. Perhaps it is only metaphor. Perhaps it is only dry geology. But for those who listen closely, the moon's song carries another possibility, that it is not simply our satellite, but something far stranger, something that might have been built. If the moon is indeed hollow, or even partly so, what purpose could it serve? Who would have made it, and why? To seek an answer, we must look beyond the tremors of Apollo and the theories of scientists. We must turn again to the whispers of ancient texts, where the moon is not merely a companion, but a guardian, a manipulator, perhaps even a maker of worlds. And among those whispers lies one of the strangest questions of all. Did the moon arrive to shape life itself? Picture the silence of the moon. A silence so deep it presses on your ears. A silence untouched by air, by wind, by the rustle of leaves or the hum of life. Now imagine breaking that silence, not with a whisper, but with an explosion. It was November 14th, 1969. Apollo 12 had just become the second mission to land humans on the moon. Charles Pete, Conrad, and Alan Being spent more than 30 hours on the surface, gathering samples and leaving behind instruments. One of these devices, a seismometer, was designed to listen for tremors, to help scientists probe the moon's hidden interior. No one expected what they would hear. As the astronauts prepared to leave, Mission Control in Houston had one last test in mind. The ascent stage of the lunar module, the top half of the spacecraft that had carried Conrad and Bean back into orbit, was now just dead weight. So NASA made a decision. They would crash it. The module, weighing several tons, was steered toward the surface. It struck the moon with the force of a small bomb. Dust plumed into the vacuum, a silent eruption seen only by distant instruments. And then the moon answered. The Apollo 11 seismometer, sitting miles away, registered the impact. At first, nothing unusual. A spike of vibration, as expected. But instead of fading, the signal lingered. It went on and on. For nearly an hour, the moon reverberated, like the toll of a struck bell. Waves of seismic energy traveled through the lunar body and refused to fade away. The ground itself seemed to hum with resonance. On Earth, an earthquake shaking dies down in minutes. The oceans, the atmosphere, the fractured layers of crust all act to absorb and dampen the shock. But the moon, dry and rigid, did not behave this way. It seemed to sing. At Houston, scientists stared at the readouts in disbelief. One engineer described the effect simply. It rang like a bell. The phrase stuck. The moon was no longer a mute companion. It was an instrument struck. It gave off music. The ringing raised unsettling questions. Why did the moon's seismic energy last so long? Was its interior structured in a way unlike Earth's? Could it be dry caverns or vast empty spaces beneath the crust? Was its density uneven, a patchwork of anomalies and voids? Even today, some scientists explain the phenomenon by pointing to the moon's extreme dryness. Without water to absorb vibrations, seismic waves simply travel farther. But that explanation only goes so far. Because this was not a single anomaly. Later missions repeated the experiment with even greater impacts. Apollo 13's Saturn IV booster slammed into the moon with the force of 11 tons of TNT. This time, the ringing lasted more than 3 hours. The moon did not just echo, it resonated like a struck metal shell. For mainstream scientists, the data were puzzling, but still within the bounds of geology. For others, however, it planted a seed of suspicion. If the moon behaved like a bell, could it mean that, in some sense, it was a bell hollow, or at least partially so? Was this an accident of nature, or a hint of design? The hollow moon hypothesis drew fuel from these moments. NASA had not set out to test for artificiality, but their instruments recorded something that seemed almost engineered. A resonance, a ringing, a sound that made the moon feel less like rock and more like structure. Close your eyes and imagine it. An empty world, silent for billions of years, was suddenly struck by human hands. The blow travels through stone, through caverns, through hidden layers. And in that silence, in that vacuum, the world does not collapse, it sings. For an hour, the moon vibrates in unnatural harmony, as if keeping a secret beneath its skin. We often think of space as mute, lifeless, indifferent. But on that November day in 1969, The moon reminded us it has a voice. A strange, resonant voice that refuses to be explained away easily. Maybe the ringing was simply geology behaving oddly. Or maybe it was something more, a cosmic bell tolling, a hint that the moon is not what it seems. For the scientists at Houston, it was just data. For the rest of us, it was poetry. A reminder that the moon's mysteries are not confined to myth, but are etched into its very stones. And as we listen to that echo, still recorded in the annals of Apollo, we can't help but wonder, was it only a song of stone? Or was it something else, something waiting to be heard? Look up at the moon on a clear night, cold, silent, eternal. It drifts through our sky as if it has always been there, perfectly placed, perfectly poised. But if the moon were not an accident of nature, if it were a creation, then we are faced with the most staggering question of all. Who or what could have built it? To imagine the moon as an engineered object is to step beyond human history and into a theater of impossibility. The scale alone is overwhelming. The moon contains 7.35 times 10 kilograms of mass. To shape, move, or construct something of that size would demand resources and knowledge that dwarf anything humanity has ever known. If such an act were attempted, it would not be the work of a species like ours, tied to fragile bodies and short lifespans. It would belong to a civilization millions, perhaps billions of years older, one that had already conquered the laws of physics as we struggle to glimpse them. In astrophysics, there is a term for such colossal projects: megastructures. Human imagination has toyed with the idea for decades. Freeman Dyson once speculated about a Dyson sphere, a vast shell built around a star to capture its energy. Others have spoken of Alderson disks, ring worlds, and star-sized engines built to reshape galaxies. The moon, if constructed, would fit into this category. An ancient megastructure designed not for a star, but for a planet. A planetary stabilizer, a cosmic lighthouse, an artificial satellite placed in orbit with exquisite precision. It would be less a natural body and more a machine. The moon is unique in ways that tempt this speculation. Its size and distance allow it to perfectly cover the sun during a solar eclipse. An astronomical coincidence so uncanny it almost feels deliberate. Its orbit stabilizes Earth's tilt, preventing climate chaos that would otherwise make complex life nearly impossible. Was this careful balance a product of cosmic accident, or the signature of intent and engineered harmony designed to nurture life below? Many ancient cultures whispered of sky gods, beings who came from the stars, wielding powers humanity could not understand. Were these just stories, or distorted echoes of a truth too vast for memory to hold? The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, powerful figures said to descend from the heavens. The Dogon of Mali spoke of beings from the Sirius system who brought knowledge of the stars. Across continents, myths describe visitors who shaped the world and departed. Could these stories be cultural shadows of an encounter with the engineers who built or placed the moon? If we dared to think of the moon as an engineered object, then the next question follows. What is it made of? Could it be hollow, with layers of armor beneath its crust? Could the Maria the dark plains we see be scars of construction, the patches of a colossal framework? Perhaps its heart is not molten rock, but machinery, an ancient reactor, a stabilizing core, a gyroscope designed to lock Earth into balance. The Apollo seismometers hinted at odd density patterns and long-lasting reverberations. To a radical mind, these could be the fingerprints of a hollow shell, a design hidden under billions of years of dust. Engineering a satellite the size of the moon would serve purposes both practical and profound. Stabilization. Without the moon, Earth would wobble chaotically, swinging its climate in violent extremes. Life might never have advanced beyond the simplest forms. Tides. The moon's pull stirs the oceans, driving nutrient cycles, shaping coastlines, and perhaps even guiding evolution itself. Light. Its gentle reflection illuminates the night, influencing human behavior, culture, and myth. Was the moon positioned not just as a machine, but as a stage light-setting the rhythm for Earth's story, the rise of civilization, and the awareness of the cosmos? Human beings have long dreamed of constructing impossible objects. The Great Pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, the giant heads of Easter Island, all monuments to an impulse that exceeds practical need. If our species, in its infancy, built structures that challenge understanding even now, what might a species a million years older build? A satellite the size of a planet may not be beyond reach, but merely the next step in its own cultural pyramid. Carl Sagan once warned against the arrogance of imagining ourselves alone. If advanced civilizations exist, their projects would likely be so vast we might mistake them for natural phenomena. A star dimming strangely in the distance, perhaps a Dyson sphere. A galaxy with odd patterns of motion perhaps, guided by colossal engines. And here, orbiting quietly above us, a moon that seems perfectly tuned for life. Could it, too, be an artifact we have mistaken for geology? Science fiction has offered possible blueprints. A shell world, a hollow sphere filled with chambers, machinery, or even habitats. A staging post, a base for interstellar travelers camouflaged as a natural satellite. A stabilizer, a deliberate counterweight to lock Earth into balance, ensuring the planet ripened for intelligent life. Each design hints at intent. Each demands technology we cannot yet imagine. In 1970, two Soviet scientists, Michael Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, published a paper speculating that the moon was a spaceship of the gods. They proposed it could be a hollowed-out planetoid, reinforced with internal structures. While the mainstream dismissed it as science fiction, the idea sparked decades of fascination in alternative circles. For them, the Apollo ringing data was not geology, it was a clue. Even if the moon is natural, entertaining the idea of its construction forces us to confront our own limits. What might humanity achieve in 1,000 years? In 10,000? Could we one day move moons, build rings, or hollow asteroids for habitation? Perhaps the moon is not an alien artifact, but a mirror showing us a vision of what intelligence, carried to its farthest horizon, might attempt. The moon hangs above us, silent and inscrutable. To most, it is simply a rock, born of collision, shaped by time. But to dreamers, to skeptics, to those who gaze too long, it becomes something more, a riddle in plain sight. If it is a construct, then we are not the first engineers of the impossible. We are heirs to a universe already shaped by minds greater than ours. And so we look up, not just at a moon, but at a question. Is it a lantern of stone, or a machine of unimaginable age? A natural accident, or the greatest artifact ever built? Perhaps one day we will learn the truth. Until then, the moon remains both familiar and alien, our closest neighbor, and perhaps our strangest mystery. Picture the ocean at dusk. Waves lap gently against the shore. The tide rolls in and out, as it has for billions of years. Somewhere, a crab scuttles across wet sand. Tiny fish dart in shallow pools, caught between ocean and land. Life, as always, dances to the rhythm of the sea. But what drives that rhythm? What pulls the waters of the earth back and forth in their endless motion? The answer shines above us, the moon. And when you look closely at the tides, at the seasons, at the tilt of Earth itself, you begin to wonder. Was this delicate balance simply luck, or something far more intentional? The tides are the moon's most obvious gift. The gravitational pull of our satellite reaches across space, tugging at Earth's oceans, raising bulges of water that migrate as the planet spins. Twice a day, coastlines rise and fall in a pulse that is ancient and unrelenting. For human culture, tides meant navigation, fishing, and the timing of harvests. For life itself, they may have been far more an engine of transformation. Billions of years ago, When Earth's first fragile cells drifted in shallow seas, the tides were far stronger. The moon was closer then, its pull fiercer. Those powerful surges churned coastlines, mixed chemicals, and stranded microscopic organisms in tidal pools where sunlight and minerals could work their alchemy. Some scientists argue that without the push and pull of the tides, life might never have leapt from water to land. Every step of our evolutionary journey may trace back to that cosmic tug-of-war between Earth and Moon. The Moon's role does not end with tides. More subtle, but perhaps more vital, is its influence on Earth's stability. Our planet does not spin upright. It tilts 23.5 degrees off vertical, giving us our seasons. But left alone, that tilt would wander chaotically over millions of years. Without a stabilizer, Earth's climate would swing wildly. Ice ages could deepen into frozen deserts. Tropical zones could shift to the poles. Life would struggle to adapt to constant upheaval. The Moon acts as a cosmic anchor. Its gravitational embrace dampens Earth's wobble, holding our tilt within a narrow, life-friendly range. Thanks to the Moon, our planet's climate has been stable enough for forests to grow, civilizations to rise, and billions of species to thrive. Without the Moon, Earth might be a world of extremes, chaotic, inhospitable, perhaps lifeless. And then there is the strangest coincidence of all. The Moon is just the right size, at just the right distance, to create perfect solar eclipses. The Sun is 400 times larger than the Moon, but it is also 400 times farther away. This means that, from Earth's surface, the Moon can cover the Sun with eerie precision. No other known planet in the solar system has a moon so perfectly matched to its star. During an eclipse, the Moon's shadow sweeps across Earth, revealing the Sun's delicate corona, a view hidden to us otherwise. This is not just cosmic theater. Observing eclipses has given scientists clues about solar physics, stellar behavior, and even the universe itself. But why should this alignment exist at all? The odds are so slim, so precise, that some wonder if it is a coincidence or evidence of design. Consider the rhythms of life. The earliest calendars were lunar, tied to the Moon's phases. Many marine creatures still live by its cycle, spawning, migrating, or feeding under full moons or new moons. The reproductive cycles of certain corals are triggered by lunar light. Sea turtles lay eggs by it. Even human biology has hints of lunar resonance, with monthly cycles that echo its 29.5-day orbit. Life on Earth has not simply adapted to the Moon. In some sense, it has grown in its shadow, guided by its presence. Taken together, these coincidences form a pattern too tempting to ignore. The tides stirred the chemical cauldron of early Earth. The stabilization of the planet's tilt ensures a hospitable climate. The perfect eclipse ratio, allowing us to study the Sun in ways that shaped our science. The biological cycles are woven into its phases. Is this an accident of celestial mechanics or the signature of something greater? Imagine a civilization advanced enough to seed planets with life. How would they ensure stability, longevity, and eventual intelligence? They might place an artificial satellite, perfectly sized and positioned, to guide the planet's growth. The Moon could be more than a rock. It could be part of a blueprint. Some argue, of course, that it is nothing more than chance. That billions of planets exist, and we simply happen to live on where the dice rolled favorably. But chance feels fragile when you realize how many things had to go right. If the Moon were much smaller, tides would be weak, climate would be unstable. If it were much larger, its gravity might lock Earth's rotation or trigger catastrophic quakes. If it were farther away, eclipses would vanish, tides would fade. We exist in a razor-thin margin of possibility, too precise to ignore, too perfect to dismiss. In 1993, a study by Jacques Lasker and colleagues showed that without the Moon, Earth's tilt could wander by as much as 60 degrees over millions of years. Imagine Antarctica facing the sun while the tropics freeze under permanent ice. Complex life under such instability may never have flourished. In other words, the moon didn't just influence life. It may have allowed it. Perhaps this is why so many cultures tied the moon to fertility, rebirth, and cycles. To them, the moon was not just a light in the sky, but a silent partner in creation itself. The Babylonians linked lunar cycles to agriculture. The Greeks gave the moon goddesses of birth and growth. Indigenous peoples across the world timed planting, hunting, and ceremonies to their phases. Instinctively, humanity understood the moon was life's companion. Today, as we search for habitable exoplanets, scientists ask not only about size and temperature, but also about moons. Could giant exomoons stabilize alien worlds the way ours does? Could the presence or absence of such satellites decide whether a planet is barren or teeming with life? In that sense, the moon is not just Earth's companion, but a model for cosmic habitability. A reminder that life may require not only a planet and a star, but also a carefully placed third partner. Stand by the shore again. Watch the tide creep up the sand, then retreat. Watch the horizon glow under a full moon. Behind this quiet rhythm lies a chain of coincidences, so improbable it begins to look like intention. A satellite is perfectly placed, a planet perfectly balanced, a dance of gravity that nurtured the spark of life. If it is a chance, then we are impossibly lucky. If it is design, then we are part of something far larger than we can imagine. The moon does not answer. It simply pulls, and the oceans obey. Life follows as it always has. And in its silence, the moon leaves us a question. Did it make us by accident or by design? A clay tablet lies cracked in the dust. Its surface is etched with wedge-shaped symbols marks pressed by a reed thousands of years ago. Somewhere across time, a Sumerian scribe leaned close to wet clay and recorded a story not for himself, but for us. What he carved was not merely an account of crops or kings. It was a memory of the sky when it looked different than it does now. For scattered across the world in Mesopotamia, in India, in Africa, we find myths and texts that whisper the same strange idea, that there was once a time before the moon, a time when humanity gazed upward and saw something else. The Sumerians, among the world's first great civilizations, lived under vast skies unpolluted by modern lights. They tracked the heavens with a precision that still astonishes astronomers. Their tablets tell of planetary movements, eclipses, and omens. But hidden within those texts are passages that feel strangely out of place. Some tablets speak of two suns in the sky, one blazing, one softer. Others hint at a celestial body arriving later, intruding into the established order of the heavens. To the Sumerians, the gods were celestial. If something new appeared in the sky, it was no less than divine intervention. One fragment, debated endlessly by scholars, describes a time when the night was without its lantern, a world where stars alone filled the darkness. Then came a lesser light, hung in the sky to rule the night. The moon, it seems, was not assumed to have always been there. It had a moment of arrival. Was this metaphor poetry in mythic garb or a cultural memory of something extraordinary? Across the world, in the Indian subcontinent, the Rig Veda, the oldest of the sacred hymns, carries echoes of a cosmic rearrangement. The verses describe the heavens as once unstable, unsettled. They speak of celestial interventions, of gods who placed the moon in the sky as if assigning roles in a grand drama. The sun was the eternal father, the moon a newer child given dominion over cycles of time. One Vedic hymn refers to two suns that shone before the moon's birth, a line that scholars wrestle with. Was it an allegory? A metaphor for cosmic principles? Or was it, like the Sumerian account, a reflection of something once observed? Even more curious are the Vedas' references to time itself. The moon was not simply a lamp in the sky, it was a clock, a marker by which rituals and sacrifices were aligned. Its arrival, therefore, marked not only a change in the heavens, but a restructuring of human life on Earth. If the moon's placement was sudden, its effect on humanity was immediate. The creation of order, calendars, and cycles. Civilization itself may have been reshaped by the new light in the sky. Far to the south, among the Zulu of Africa, myths tell a story that sounds even more startling. According to legend, the moon was once not in the sky at all. Instead, it was a great fireball kept hidden by two brothers, Mpanku and Kalani, described as serpents of the heavens. They rolled this glowing orb across the sky and then placed it above the earth, where it has remained ever since. To the Zulu storytellers, this was not the distant work of gods, but a deliberate act. The moon was brought here. In their myths, the world before the moon was different. The earth spun faster. The nights were darker. Seasons were unpredictable. Only after the moon took its place did the world settle into its present rhythm. What is remarkable is not just the imagery, but how it aligns with scientific speculation. If the moon indeed arrived after, had already cooled and birthed life, its influence on tides and climate would have radically changed conditions. To the Zulu, that shift became myth. To science, it remains a question mark. What are we to make of this? Three cultures, separated by geography and time, all speaking of a sky without the moon. Each preserves some version of a story where the moon was introduced, installed, or placed into orbit. The Sumerians, a lesser light that came later. The Vedas, 2 suns before the moon was born. The Zulu, a fireball rolled into place by cosmic brothers. These are not the only examples. The Chibchas of Colombia told of a time before the moon. The Greeks, too, had hints of such an era in their oral traditions. It is as if scattered civilizations, peering upward across millennia, remembered a sky different from our own. Skeptics argue these are metaphors, nothing more. The Sumerians were not chronicling astronomy, but theology. The Vedas were not observations, but hymns. The Zulu myths were not science, but allegory. And yet, myths often preserve kernels of memory. Flood myths appear on every continent, likely echoing real cataclysms at the end of the Ice Age. Fire myths may remind us of ancient volcanic eruptions. Could lunar myths remember a celestial event, the arrival, capture, or sudden visibility of the moon? If the moon is truly as old as Earth as scientists believe formed from a colossal impact 4.5 billion years ago, then no human eyes could have witnessed its arrival. Humanity, after all, emerged only a few 100,000 years ago. But what if the mainstream story is incomplete? What if the moon is not as old as we think? What if it were placed not 4.5 billion years ago, but in a time when humans could remember? Even some scientists admit puzzles remain. The moon's orbit is suspiciously circular. Its density is oddly low. Its size relative to Earth is anomalous among planetary moons. And then there is the coincidence of eclipses, the perfect match of scale and distance. For ancient peoples, these alignments were omens of the gods. For us, they are calculations of chance. But for some, they may hint at design. If design, then perhaps the myths are not allegory, but testimony. Not imagination, but memory. A memory of something or someone placing the moon where it is now. Return to that cracked clay tablet. Look again at the faint cuneiform lines. Listen to the Zulu elder speaking by firelight. Hear the chant of the Vedic hymn drifting across thousands of years. Each is saying something we struggle to believe. The moon has not always been here. The sky itself changed. Were these cultures merely weaving poetry around the night sky, or did they preserve, against all odds, the trace of a cosmic intervention? The moon looks back at us with silence. No inscription carved into its dust, no plaque declaring its origin. Only myths, scattered like breadcrumbs across human history, reminding us that our nearest neighbor is not only a satellite, but a mystery written in clay, sung in hymns, whispered in firelight, and still waiting for us to read. The moon hangs still, serene, eternal, a pale, dead world. That is how we imagine it. But if you ask astronomers across history, they'll tell you a different story, one where the moon is not so still, not so silent. For centuries, scattered observations have recorded something strange: sudden flashes of light, fleeting glows, and even drifting shadows that seem to move across the lunar surface. These are the so-called lunar transient phenomena, P. Odd, inconsistent, and frustratingly elusive. They last seconds, sometimes minutes, and then they vanish, leaving nothing but questions behind. The first recorded sighting dates back to November of 1178. A group of monks in Canterbury claimed to see the upper horn of the crescent moon split in two, spewing fire, sparks, and smoke. To them, it looked like the moon itself was burning. Modern astronomers have wondered if what they saw was the impact that created the crater Giordano Bruno, a scar still visible today. If true, they may have witnessed one of the most dramatic cosmic collisions in recorded history. But the monks were not alone. In 1787, the great astronomer William Herschel, discoverer of Uranus, peered through his telescope and swore he saw 3 bright red glowing spots on the moon. He thought he was witnessing volcanic eruptions. Today, we know the moon is volcanically dead. But what, then, did he see? Reports of TLPs have trickled through the centuries like whispers. In 1843, an astronomer in Germany described a luminous mist over the crater Aristarchus. In the early 1900s, others reported mysterious bluish glows near the same region. Even in the 1960s, with telescopes far better than Herschel's, astronomers in observatories across the world logged strange lights on the moon, often red, sometimes white, always fleeting. The Aristarchus crater, in particular, is a hotbed for these anomalies. Nearly half of all TLP reports cluster there. Why? No one knows. Some speculate it's due to its high albedo. The crater reflects sunlight unusually well. Others wonder if its geology is different, perhaps allowing gases trapped beneath the surface to escape. And then there are those who suggest something more unsettling. When NASA prepared for the Apollo missions, they were well aware of the long history of these reports. So much so that in 1968, they asked professional and amateur astronomers alike to keep watch for TLPs, hoping to catch one in real time. On several occasions, they did. Observers described glowing spots and even shifting patterns of light, again, often near Aristarchus. One of these reports was relayed to the Apollo 11 crew while they orbited the moon. Neil Armstrong himself commented on the sighting, noting a bright area that did not match the surrounding terrain. NASA never released a definitive explanation. Mainstream science has tried to account for these lights in rational ways. Some may be outgassing events, brief releases of trapped radon or other gases from beneath the lunar surface. Others might be electrostatic discharges, as fine dust shifts and charges under solar wind. Still others may simply be optical illusion, sunlight glinting off crater rims at just the right angle to fool the eye. But these explanations remain unsatisfying, because the lights don't always behave like natural reflections. They pulse, they change color, they sometimes move. And if they are just illusions, why do they keep showing up in the same places century after century? For those inclined toward mystery, TLPs are tantalizing. Some suggest they are evidence of hidden lunar activity, small-scale seismic shifts, or even the remnants of ancient volcanic vents still sputtering faintly. Others step further into speculation. Could these flashes and glows be signals, artifacts of something artificial within the moon? If the moon were engineered, or even hollow, could its inner mechanisms sometimes bleed through invisible ways? To believers, Aristarchus is not merely a crater. It is a window. Look up at the moon tonight, and it will seem calm, changeless, eternal. But history suggests otherwise. From medieval monks seeing fire in the sky, to Herschel's glowing spots, to Apollo astronauts peering down at shifting lights, the moon has shown us brief glimpses of something it does not usually reveal. Are these natural phenomena we do not yet fully understand? Or are they signs, tiny cracks in the illusion of a barren, dead world? The moon may be silent, but every so often it flickers. And in those flickers, we glimpse the possibility that its story is stranger than we dare to imagine. Because sometimes the moon does not just shine. Sometimes it speaks in flashes. Imagine the moon not as a silent companion, but as an eye, cold, patient, ever watching. From the dawn of civilization, it has followed us hung above our fires, our temples, our wars. It does not blink. It does not turn away. If one were to design a perfect vantage point from which to observe Earth, it would look exactly like the moon, tidally locked, always showing the same face, forever positioned in a precise orbit that grants it an unbroken view of its host. And so, a question arises. What if the moon is not merely a rock? What if it is a watcher? Let's step back. The moon's orbital mechanics are uncanny. Its rotation period matches its revolution around Earth exactly, a phenomenon called tidal locking. The result? One hemisphere, the so-called near side, is always visible to Earth, while the far side remains forever hidden. To an engineer designing an observation station, this is perfection. It ensures continuous surveillance of Earth, without the need for complex maneuvering. No telescope or satellite could offer such stability for so long. And then there is its size and placement. The moon is just the right distance to cover the sun perfectly during an eclipse, a cosmic coincidence so exact it feels designed. From Earth, this creates moments of profound alignment, moments when attention naturally shifts skyward. A signal, perhaps, or a reminder. When humans first reached the moon in the 1960s, the world celebrated. But behind the public triumph of Apollo lay private fears. The Cold War was at its height. Both the United States and the Soviet Union wondered, what if the moon was already occupied? Declassified documents revealed genuine military concern that structures, bases, or even weapons might exist on the lunar surface. The Pentagon drew up plans under the codename Project Horizon, envisioning a U.S. outpost on the moon, not just for exploration, but to secure it before anyone else could. The Soviets, too, drafted similar plans. Why? Because both sides understood the same truth. If you wanted to watch, to control, or to threaten Earth, the moon was the ultimate high ground. Throughout the Apollo era, whispers began to circulate. Astronauts, though careful with their words, occasionally hinted at strange encounters. Radio operators claimed to overhear conversations between Apollo crews and mission control fragments, suggesting they saw lights on the rim of the crater, or objects lined up watching. NASA never confirmed these reports, but the UFO community seized on them, weaving a narrative that astronauts discovered evidence of artificial monitoring stations on the moon. One persistent rumor surrounds Apollo 11. While Armstrong and Aldrin explored the surface, amateur radio operators in Europe allegedly picked up a secondary channel where Armstrong reported watching eyes, objects observing their landing from a distance. If true, the world as first steps on another celestial body were also humanity as first steps under surveillance. The idea of the moon as a watcher is not only modern. Ancient traditions sometimes cast the moon as more than a celestial lantern. It was a presence. In Mesopotamian lore, the moon god Sin was not merely a light, but a judge recording deeds. In some Native American traditions, the moon was the great watcher of the night, keeper of cycles, observer of humanity. And in African Zulu myths, the moon was said to have been brought and set in the sky, serving as a tool of those who came from the stars. A light, yes, but also a sentinel. Perhaps these were metaphors. Perhaps not. If we strip the myths away and consider only logistics, the idea remains strangely plausible. The moon's far side offers a perfect shielded location for radio telescopes, hidden from Earth's electromagnetic chatter. Modern scientists indeed dream of building observatories there, quiet stations to listen to the cosmos. But what if someone thought of this long before us? What if the moon itself is already such a construct, seeded with hidden machinery deep within its crust, silently recording, transmitting, or waiting? Some theorists suggest that if an advanced civilization wanted to monitor a developing species, they would not need to visit constantly. They would leave behind a watcher self-sustaining, unobtrusive, indistinguishable from nature itself. In the 1960s and 70s, scientists occasionally picked up unusual radio emissions near the moon. Most were dismissed as interference, but a handful remain unexplained brief bursts that seem to come not from deep space, but from the vicinity of our lunar neighbor. Even today, lunar orbiters occasionally detect anomalous readings, heat spots, unexplained magnetic fields, regions where instruments behave strangely. These are often chalked up to geology. But to some, they look suspiciously like interference like camouflage. In 1928, before humans had ever launched a single satellite, radio operators in Norway reported something bizarre. They picked up long-delayed echoes of their own transmissions, radio signals bouncing back from somewhere in space seconds, even minutes later. At the time, newspapers speculated that the moon might be the source. Later, the phenomenon was tied to the legend of the Black Knight satellite, an alleged ancient monitor in Earth orbit. If such an object could exist around Earth, could something larger, grander, exist upon or within the moon itself? Consider also the cultural effect of a watcher. If the moon were intentionally designed to monitor Earth, then its visibility is part of the strategy. Unlike satellites, which are invisible to the naked eye, the moon dominates our sky, looming nightly, imprinting itself into our collective psyche. To be watched is to behave differently. And if humanity has, consciously or unconsciously, always sensed the moon's gaze, how might that have shaped us? Our myths, our rituals, our religions? Did we begin to pray to the moon because we felt its attention? Or more chillingly, did we worship not a rock, but a machine? As we look back at the moon, it looks back at us, a pale sentinel that has watched the rise of empires, the collapse of civilizations, the flickering of countless generations. If it is only a rock, it has still been the silent witness to all our history. But if it is more, if it is a watcher deliberately placed, it means we have never truly been alone. Every fire we lit, every word we carved into stone, every secret we thought hidden beneath Earth's shadows, may have been observed. And the question that lingers, unsettling and electric, is this: is the watcher still only watching? Or, one day, will it act? The Apollo program stands as one of humanity's greatest triumphs. Between 1969 and 1972, 12 men walked upon the lunar surface, leaving footprints that remain undisturbed to this day. The official story is clean and polished, a tale of courage, ingenuity, and the indomitable spirit of exploration. But behind the broadcasted images and carefully worded press releases, whispers linger. Whispers of moments when the radio fell silent, when photographs revealed more than they should, and when astronauts trained, disciplined, and sworn to secrecy hinted at experiences they could not explain. These are the Apollo mysteries. Every Apollo mission relied on constant communication between Earth and the spacecraft. Yet in several missions, strange periods of radio silence appear in the logs. During Apollo 11, for instance, when Armstrong and Aldrin descended to the lunar surface, a gap of 2 minutes exists, 2 minutes in which, according to some radio operators, an alternate transmission was intercepted. The claim Armstrong reported seeing large objects watching them from the edge of a crater. NASA has always denied the existence of such a transmission, dismissing it as amateur misinterpretation. But the story refuses to die. Some versions even suggest that after this report, the feed was switched to a classified channel, accessible only to mission control and a few high-ranking officials. 2 minutes. That's all it would take to change the narrative forever. When the Apollo astronauts returned, they brought back not only rock samples, but also thousands of photographs. These images, craters, hills, the dusty regolith, were released to the public, becoming icons of space history. But researchers poring over the high-resolution archives sometimes point to anomalies. Glints of light where no atmosphere exists to scatter them. Geometric shadows that seem too sharp, too regular. One photograph from Apollo 17 shows a peculiar formation on the horizon rectangular, as if shaped by design. NASA's explanation: lens flare or tricks of light on the terrain. Yet to some, it looks unmistakably artificial, like the wall of the structure buried in dust. Other frames reveal transient lights hovering above the lunar surface. Again, NASA's response was pragmatic cosmic rays striking the film, static, or debris. But the pattern of these lights aligned in formation raises an eyebrow. If these were only photographic errors, why do they recur across missions, across cameras, across crews? In the decades following Apollo, a slow trickle of declassified documents began to emerge, most concerned with mundane technical details. Yet tucked within the archives are fragments that feel unsettling. Take Apollo 15. During one transmission, Commander David Scott describes particles or objects moving outside the spacecraft window. He calls them interesting, then quickly reverts to checklist dialogue as though reminded not to dwell. Or Apollo 16. Astronaut John Young reports flashes on the horizon, sharp bursts of light, and falls silent as ground control shifts topics. And Apollo 17, the last mission. Gene Cernan, the final man to walk on the moon, later remarked in an interview, "There were things out there. We were never alone." He never elaborated. What did he mean? The men who walked on the moon were not prone to exaggeration. They were engineers, test pilots, scientists trained to remain calm under unimaginable pressure. For them to hint at mysteries carries weight. Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, once admitted that Apollo 11 encountered an unidentified object on its way. He later clarified that it was probably part of their discarded rocket stage. But his hesitation, his phrasing, "We weren't sure," leaves a residue of doubt. Gordon Cooper, though never part of the Apollo landings, was a Mercury astronaut and later an outspoken believer in UFO phenomena. He claimed that while working with NASA, he witnessed unexplained craft, and he believed that secrecy cloaked far more than the public realized. Even Edgar Mitchell, Apollo 14 astronaut, spoke openly after retirement about extraterrestrial presence. He stated, without hesitation, that he believed humanity had long been monitored. His credibility as a scientist makes his words difficult to ignore. Officially, Apollo 17 was the final mission. But rumors persist that additional, classified missions were conducted secret landings to investigate anomalies discovered during earlier flights. Skeptics dismiss this as fantasy, yet tantalizing hints remain. Budget reports from the 1970s suggest expenditures unaccounted for. Rocket stages appear in records without corresponding missions. And in 1976, Soviet intelligence allegedly reported unusual activity around the moon, activity they believed was American. If true, what compelled such secrecy? What could have been found that warranted missions never disclosed to the public? Some of the most eerie evidence comes not from photos or documents, but from the astronauts' own voices. The raw recordings, hours of chatter between spacecraft and mission control, include moments of uneasy comments quickly brushed aside, tone shifting from curiosity to caution. In Apollo 11's raw audio, for example, Armstrong remarks cryptically, "What is it? We don't know what it is." The official transcripts skip over this, smoothing it into routine. On Apollo 10, orbiting the moon just before the first landing, astronauts reported hearing strange music, a whistling, otherworldly sound through their headsets. NASA later explained it as radio interference between the command and lunar modules. But the astronauts themselves admitted the sound was unlike anything they had heard before. Imagine drifting in the void, orbiting the far side of the moon, cut off from Earth's signal, and hearing music no one could explain. If we entertain the possibility that the Apollo astronauts did witness anomalies, the implications are staggering. Were they seeing remnants of ancient structures hidden beneath dust and shadow? Were the lights evidence of active monitoring craft, observing humanity's first steps beyond Earth? Or were the astronauts themselves unwilling participants in a staged revelation, carefully allowed to glimpse just enough to know they were not alone, then sworn into silence upon return? Secrecy is a familiar tool in space exploration. The public receives only fragments, curated for reassurance. Behind the curtain, what truths might lie locked in classified vaults, in recordings never released, in photographs quietly altered before publication? Today, half a century later, most Apollo astronauts have passed away. With them, perhaps, went secrets they never dared to speak. The surviving few tread carefully when asked. They honor the program, celebrate its achievements, but when conversation drifts toward the strange, their eyes tighten, their voices drop, and the subject changes. If there was nothing, why does silence feel so heavy? The Apollo missions gave us the moon, its soil, its rocks, its surface beneath our boots. But perhaps they also gave us something else. Unanswered questions, gaps in transmission, anomalies in photographs, cryptic words from the only humans ever to walk beyond Earth. History records Apollo as a triumph of engineering, but in its shadows lie whispers of something stranger, something unspoken. And so we are left to wonder, when humanity finally returns to the moon openly, with modern eyes and modern instruments, will we at last uncover what Apollo glimpsed and concealed? Or will we find only more mysteries, waiting patiently in the dust? The sky darkens, birds fall silent, shadows lengthen unnaturally across the land. And then, in a moment that has awed humans since the dawn of time, the sun disappears, swallowed by a black circle rimmed in fire, a solar eclipse. To witness it is to feel the universe whisper in geometry, to sense that something so precise cannot possibly be an accident. Because here's the mystery. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, and yet, by extraordinary chance, it also happens to be 400 times closer to Earth. This unlikely symmetry means that from our vantage point, the two appear exactly the same size. Only because of this ratio do perfect total eclipses occur, one of the most striking cosmic spectacles visible to human eyes. Coincidence or design? Think about the numbers for a moment. The sun's diameter, about 1.39 million kilometers. The moon's, just 3,474 kilometers. A staggering difference, like comparing a beach ball to a pinhead. And yet, the distance from Earth to each body compensates for this disparity. It is this exquisite balance that allows the moon to slip exactly over the sun's disk, neither too small to leave an unhidden glare, nor too large to erase the burning corona that spills around its edges. This is no sloppy overlap. It is perfection. A cosmic lock, cut and keyed. And here's what makes it stranger still. This alignment is temporary. The moon is not stationary. It drifts outward from Earth at about 3.8 centimeters each year. Slowly, inevitably, it is receding. That means in the far past, the moon would have appeared larger in the sky. Eclipses would have been annular, where the sun is hidden completely, its corona smothered. In the far future, the moon will appear too small, leaving a glowing ring of daylight even at maximum eclipse. So we are living in a sliver of time cosmically brief, when the moon's size and distance align with perfection. What are the odds that intelligent life, capable of recognizing and recording this coincidence, would arise during this fleeting window? For ancient civilizations, eclipses were terrifying and sacred. The sudden extinguishing of the sun seemed like a rupture in the order of reality. In China, eclipses were once seen as dragons devouring the sun. In India, they were blamed on the demon Rahu, who was beheaded yet still pursued the sun and moon in vengeance. In the Americas, eclipses were omens, messages from gods whose meanings had to be deciphered through ritual. But beneath myth was an unmistakable recognition. The geometry was uncanny. Again and again, cultures noted that the moon's disk fit the sun with a surgeon's precision. Was this why so many myths described the moon not as a natural wanderer, but as a deliberate presence placed, aligned, purposeful? Science, of course, explains eclipses without invoking design. It is, in essence, an accident of celestial mechanics. With enough stars, enough planets, and enough moons, rare alignments are bound to occur somewhere. But the question is not simply about rarity, it's about consequence. Because eclipses have not only inspired awe, they've driven discovery. It was during a total eclipse in 1919 that Arthur Eddington confirmed Einstein's theory of general relativity, measuring starlight bending around the sun's mass. Without that moment of cosmic coincidence, one of the pillars of modern physics might have remained unproven. In other words, eclipses are not only beautiful, they are gateways to knowledge. Knowledge humanity could not have obtained otherwise. Which leads us to an unsettling speculation. If one were to design a system to encourage curiosity, to push a young species toward scientific discovery, wouldn't a perfect eclipse be the ultimate breadcrumb? Some researchers of the fringe go further. They suggest the moon is not a natural satellite at all, but a constructed and engineered object placed with surgical precision. They argue, if you wanted to monitor a planet, to stabilize it for life, and to give its inhabitants a hint of higher design, you might choose exactly such a configuration. Stabilize the axis, regulate the tides, and once every so often, draw back the curtain in a cosmic performance, the moon covering the sun in perfect symmetry, as though to say, look closer, ask questions. A message hidden not in words, but in geometry. Skeptics laugh at such notions. Coincidences, they remind us, are inevitable in a universe of countless worlds. To see meaning in them is human pattern-seeking pareidolia on a cosmic scale. And yet, even skeptics admit, the eclipse is unusual. Few, if any, other planets in our solar system offer such a spectacle. Their moons are either too small, too far, or too irregularly shaped. Only Earth's moon provides the perfect fit. And only Earth harbors life intelligent enough to notice. Perhaps the most telling clue is not scientific, but emotional. Stand beneath a total eclipse, and you feel something primeval stir within. The temperature drops, the air stills. Animals grow restless. Human crowds fall silent, as if attending a sacred rite. It is one of the few natural events that can move even the most rational scientists to tears. Why should this be? Why should an accident of celestial mechanics strike so deep into the soul? Unless it is meant to. Imagine you are a civilization capable of seeding life. You wish your creation not only to survive, but to question, to wonder, to reach upward. You might leave them clues, not obvious, not overwhelming, but subtle alignments, hints woven into the very fabric of their skies. The eclipse, then, becomes more than an accident. It becomes an invitation, a sign that geometry itself can speak, if only we learn to listen. The moon is small, the sun is vast. Their dance across the heavens should be clumsy, mismatched, imperfect. And yet, when viewed from Earth, they fit together like puzzle pieces cut by an unseen hand. Coincidence? Perhaps the universe is large enough for accidents of staggering improbability. But as the sky darkens and the stars emerge in midday, as the sun's blazing crown erupts around the black circle of the moon, one cannot help but wonder, is this the most beautiful accident in the universe, or the most elegant design? The name Carl Sagan is synonymous with science, wonder, and skepticism. A man who invited the public to share in the poetry of the cosmos, while grounding every word in the discipline of evidence. He gave us the image of billions and billions of stars, and reminded us of our fragility on a pale blue dot. But hidden within his measured language, there are moments, brief flickers, when Sagan seemed to entertain ideas far stranger than most would expect. And one of those moments concerns the moon. Carl Sagan lived at the delicate intersection of curiosity and caution. He was willing to explore extraordinary claims, but always with the sharp edge of skepticism. In his 1966 book Intelligent Life in the Universe, co-authored with the Russian astrophysicist Isif Shklovsky, Sagan discussed many possibilities that, at the time, bordered on science fiction. The two men speculated on how advanced civilizations might colonize planets, engineer environments, or even hollow out asteroids to serve as artificial worlds. It was in this context that the moon entered the conversation. Shklovsky, reviewing the moon's peculiar density and orbital behavior, cautiously floated the notion that perhaps, just perhaps, it wasn't entirely natural. That in the far reaches of possibility, the moon might have been altered or even deliberately placed. Sagan, ever careful, did not endorse the claim outright, but neither did he dismiss it with laughter. Instead, he left the door cracked open, noting that extraordinary anomalies require extraordinary explanations, and that one should not rule out extraordinary possibilities. What anomalies was he referring to? For one, the moon's density. Compared to Earth, the moon is unusually light, with a composition that seems oddly depleted of heavier metals. To some, this suggests it may have lost material, or never possessed it, in ways difficult to fully explain. Then there is the orbit. Unlike many moons in the solar system, Earth's moon is disproportionately large compared to its host planet. In fact, it is almost a double planet system, rather than a typical planet and satellite pair. And of course, there are the coincidences. It's the perfect size for eclipses, its role in stabilizing Earth's tilt, its peculiar tidal lock that shows us only one face. Sagan did not weave these into a conspiracy, but he did not ignore them either. He placed them gently on the table of scientific curiosity, where future generations might decide what to make of them. It is here that Sagan's words carry unusual weight. From an anonymous fringe theorist, a claim of an artificial moon is easy to dismiss. But from Sagan, the great communicator of science, the very acknowledgement of the idea lends it a strange gravity. His phrasing was cautious, almost surgical. He never claimed the moon is artificial. He simply entertained that if anomalies exist, then extraordinary answers must remain within the realm of discussion until disproven. It was, in a way, a subtle act of intellectual bravery to consider even briefly that the object dominating our night sky might be more than it seems. This moment did not go unnoticed. Fringe researchers seized upon it, citing Sagan's name as though it were a banner of legitimacy. In the decades that followed, the hollow moon hypothesis grew in popularity among alternative historians, UFO theorists, and speculative writers, many pointing back to that slim window of possibility acknowledged by Sagan himself. Of course, mainstream science has since reinforced natural explanations, the giant impact hypothesis, refined models of lunar evolution, and data from orbiters and sample returns. The moon is strange, yes, but strangeness does not prove design. Yet still, the cultural echo remains. Sagan's cautionary words ripple outward, preserved in books, forums, and whispered references. Even Carl Sagan admitted the moon is odd, and here lies the irony. Carl Sagan intended his remarks as a guardrail against arrogance, the reminder that science must not prematurely close doors. Instead, his words became fuel for those eager to pry those doors wide open. In life, he fought against pseudoscience, cautioning the public to balance wonder with evidence. And yet, in death, one of his smallest acknowledgments has been transformed into a kind of myth, that even Sagan suspected something about the moon. Perhaps this, too, is fitting, because Sagan understood better than most that the universe thrives on paradox, that the line between imagination and truth is often thin, and that human beings need both skepticism and wonder to truly explore the cosmos. Picture Carl Sagan, late at night, peering through a telescope. He knows the moon is a battered sphere of rock, a companion shaped by violence and time. And yet, as it glows over the horizon, its face unchanging, its presence both intimate and mysterious, perhaps he too felt the whisper that maybe, just maybe, there is more here than we yet understand. And in that moment, Carl Sagan's greatest gift is revealed. Not the answers he gave, but the questions he left us brave enough to ask. The moon has always felt ancient, not just in the sense of time, but in the way it gazes down upon us, an eternal witness. Yet what if it is not simply a natural bystander? What if its presence is itself an echo, the fingerprint of a civilization long gone, or one that never belonged to Earth at all? In this chapter, we venture into some of the most daring speculations, that the moon was placed, not born. And if that is so, by whom? By what kind of intelligence? And why? Mainstream history insists that advanced civilization began only a few thousand years ago, with the rise of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. Before that, humanity was scattered tribes of hunter-gatherers, slowly learning to till the soil and shape stone into monuments. But whispers from ancient texts, myths, and unexplained ruins suggest something different. Atlantis, Lemuria, Hyperborea, names that read like poetry, yet persist across cultures as if half-remembered truths. Plato wrote of Atlantis not as a myth, but as a memory passed down from Egyptian priests. It was said to be an advanced maritime empire, destroyed in a cataclysm, leaving behind nothing but scattered stories. The lost continent of Lemuria entered the imagination later, tied to myths of sunken lands in the Indian Ocean, supposedly home to a civilization of extraordinary wisdom. And Hyperborea land of eternal spring was placed in the far north, said to be inhabited by beings closer to gods than men. Could these stories be the fragments of civilizations erased from memory? And if so, could they have been capable of works far greater than what we imagine works, like placing the moon in Earth's orbit? When we measure civilization, we often think in centuries. Rome lasted about 1,000 years. Ancient Egypt, 3,000. But Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Humanity, as a species, perhaps 300,000 years. That leaves an almost unfathomable gulf of time, millions of years, when intelligent beings could have risen and fallen, leaving only whispers in stone and myth. Geology is merciless. Continents shift, mountains rise and crumble, oceans swallow entire landmasses. After just 10,000 years of neglect, almost every trace of modern human civilization would vanish. Skyscrapers would collapse into rubble. Roads would be forests. Even our satellites would tumble into decay. So if there had been an advanced civilization 100,000 years ago, or 1,000,000, what would remain? Almost nothing. Except, perhaps, a monument too large to ignore. A monument like the moon. Let us imagine for a moment that a civilization, either from Earth or elsewhere, had the means to move a celestial body. What would that take? First, technology beyond anything we currently possess, megastructures capable of manipulating gravity. Engines or fields powerful enough to tug a small world across space. It sounds like science fiction, And yet, we already speak of Dyson spheres, star lifts, and terraforming. If human imagination today reaches that far, what might a million years of uninterrupted technological progress achieve? Could such a civilization have captured an object wandering the solar system, hollowed it, balanced it perfectly, and placed it into Earth's orbit? Could the moon itself be the silent legacy of a people who vanished long before history began? Strangely, echoes of a time before the moon appear across cultures. Aristotle, quoting earlier traditions, spoke of Arcadians who lived before the moon shone in the sky. The Zulu people of southern Africa tell of a time when two brothers rolled the moon into place, stealing it from a dragon. Ancient Mesopotamian texts describe celestial interventions that altered the heavens, as if rearranging the very stage of the sky. If such stories were only a local invention, they could be dismissed. But their repetition, spread across continents, is haunting. Perhaps they preserve a distorted memory, carried through myth and song, of something humanity once witnessed, the arrival of the moon. Suppose Atlantis was real, not merely a drowned city, but a global culture. Some suggest it was not destroyed by nature, but by its own technology. If it had reached a pinnacle of engineering, could it have reshaped Earth's environment? Could the moon have been its greatest project, a stabilizer, a regulator, a gift to future humanity? Imagine the Atlanteans realizing that Earth's axis wobbled chaotically, that tides were weak, that life was fragile. Imagine them seeding the sky with a guardian to anchor the balance. And then imagine their own world slipping into ruin, leaving only the moon as their epitaph. There is another possibility that the architects were not human at all. The hollow moon hypothesis and the odd ringing like a bell reports from Apollo seismic experiments have often been seized upon by those who argue the moon is an artifact. If so, its scale dwarfs anything human hands could craft. Could it have been placed here by an intelligence older, vaster, and utterly alien? A watchtower, an observatory, or perhaps even a seed ship, a vessel carrying life itself to Earth's cradle? This dovetails with the panspermia hypothesis, the idea that life may not have originated on Earth, but was seeded here from the stars. If so, the moon might have been both ship and shepherd, ensuring that the fragile experiment of life was protected long enough to thrive. In earlier chapters, we spoke of the uncanny geometry, that the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, and 400 times farther away, creating perfect eclipses. If the moon was placed, was this alignment intentional? A cosmic marker? A message written in the sky, waiting for a species to evolve eyes and reason enough to see it? Such perfection feels almost theatrical, too precise, too improbable. Perhaps it was meant to provoke the very question we now ask. Are we alone? Of course, speculation is not proof. There is no archaeological evidence of ancient engines capable of moving moons. There are no blueprints hidden in caves, no inscriptions on the lunar surface declaring its origin. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The deep oceans still conceal most of their secrets. Vast regions of the Earth's crust remain unexplored. Our history is written on fragments, and the vast majority has already crumbled into dust. Could the moon itself be the one surviving monument? A clue not of geology, but of lost engineering? Look up tonight, and the moon will be there, silent and serene. It will shine on oceans, on deserts, on ancient ruins whose builders we no longer remember. It will shine on myths of drowned continents, on stories of forgotten ages, on whispers that perhaps once long before us others walked the earth. The moon may be nothing more than rock and dust, caught in orbit by chance. Or it may be the last echo of a civilization ours, or another's echoing across time in the form of a light that never leaves the night sky. And if that is true, then every time we lift our gaze, we are not simply looking at a satellite. We are staring into a memory, one we are only just beginning to recognize. The moon is more than a satellite in the sky. It is a presence constant, watchful, and strangely intimate. For thousands of generations, humans have lived beneath its glow, and in ways subtle and profound. It has shaped not only our environment, but perhaps our very consciousness. In this chapter, we explore how the moon touches dreams, fertility, rituals, and even the foundations of human culture. And we ask the unsettling question: if the moon was placed, was it designed to guide not just the planet, but the minds of those who would one day look up at it? Life on Earth thrives on cycles, day and night, the turning of seasons, the ebb and flow of tides. Among these rhythms, the moon's 29.5-day cycle is perhaps the most intimate. For women, the menstrual cycle has long been linked to the moon's waxing and waning. Even the word menses comes from the same root as month. Ancient cultures often measured time by lunations, and many myths describe the moon as feminine, a celestial counterpart to Earth itself. This connection may not be a coincidence. Some biologists argue that our hormonal rhythms and reproductive cycles evolved under the moon's steady presence. If the moon influences tides, could it not also have subtly shaped the internal tides of the human body? And if so, was that influence part of its design? Across cultures, the moon is tied to dreams. Poets describe it as a lantern of the subconscious, a doorway into visions. Scientific studies, though tentative, have suggested that sleep quality and dream vividness may vary with the lunar phase. Some participants report more restless nights during the full moon, with sharper, stranger dreams. For our ancestors, who slept under open skies, the moon's shifting light would have been impossible to ignore. A bright full moon could stir the mind awake, inspire firelit stories, or evoke awe and fear. Over generations, those nights may have influenced the very fabric of mythology, embedding the moon as a symbol of mystery and transformation. If the moon is a mirror for the dreaming mind, perhaps it was meant to be a companion not only to Earth, but to human imagination. Before there were clocks, there was the moon. The first calendars were not written on parchment or stone, but carved as notches in bone, tracking the waxing and waning light. From Babylon to Mesoamerica, civilizations built their entire sense of time around the moon. Festivals were tied to lunar phases, harvests aligned with full moons, and great architectures, like Stonehenge, may have doubled as lunar observatories. The moon gave humanity more than light in the night. It gave structure to existence. It transformed chaos into rhythm, becoming the first cosmic clock. Was this a natural accident? Or was the moon's cycle fine-tuned to be close enough to human biology, close enough to the length of the month, that it would serve as the perfect metronome for emerging culture? In almost every ancient religion, the moon was sacred. In Egypt, it was associated with Thoth, the god of wisdom. In Mesopotamia, it was Nana, the keeper of divine time. In India, it became Chandra, radiant and cyclical. Indigenous traditions around the world celebrate moon dances, moon lodges, and ceremonies aligned to its glow. Even today, lunar festivals remain central. Ramadan follows the crescent moon. Easter is set by the first full moon after the equinox. Chinese New Year begins with the new moon. The moon was more than a background light. It became a teacher, a calendar, and a spiritual axis. It is almost as if humanity, without being told, knew the moon was meant to be followed. Consider this. Without the moon, human timekeeping might have been different. Without cycles of 29 or 30 days, months might never have existed. Without months, the very notion of longer time might have been harder to grasp. The moon may have seeded abstract thought. It asked early humans to count, to measure, to notice patterns. In its cycles, they discovered mathematics, prediction, even the concept of the future itself. It is no exaggeration to say that the moon may have helped awaken human consciousness. And again, we face the question, was this design? Was the moon positioned not only to stabilize Earth's tilt, but to stabilize the unfolding of the human mind. Beyond cycles and calendars, the moon has long acted as a mirror of the human psyche. The word lunacy comes from luna, reflecting the belief that the full moon provokes madness. Folklore tells of werewolves changing under its light, of lovers going mad with longing, of prophets seeing visions. Psychologists today might call these projections, the human mind placing its mysteries onto the sky. But what if that is exactly the point? What if the moon were meant to be a canvas for human imagination, a safe celestial mirror onto which we could project our fears and hopes? Without such a mirror, would mythology have taken the same form? Would storytelling have reached such depths? Would art, ritual, and religion have emerged as they did? The moon is not just a rock. It is a screen on which humanity has been watching itself for tens of thousands of years. If we entertain the idea that the moon is not a random accident, its influence on consciousness takes on a new weight. Perhaps the moon was meant to guide humanity, to stir its dreams, regulate its fertility, structure its time, and shape its stories. Perhaps we were never meant to evolve in darkness alone. Perhaps we were given a lamp in the sky to pull us forward, out of chaos and into culture. The notion sounds almost mythic, yet when we step back, the evidence is undeniable. Without the moon, human consciousness would be different. Maybe unrecognizably so. Look up tonight, and you will see the same moon your ancestors saw 100,000 years ago. The same moon that guided the first calendars. The same that stirred lovers and poets. The same that shaped rituals and myths. It has been humanity's constant companion, quietly aligning its rhythms with ours. A metronome for the mind, a lantern for the dreamer, a mirror for the soul. Was this all a coincidence? Or was it an intention? The moon may not only stabilize Earth's axis and oceans, it may stabilize our consciousness. It may be the unseen architect of our culture, the silent partner of our evolution. And if that is true, then humanity has never been alone. We have always been guided. We have always been watched. Not by distant gods, but by the glowing eye that rises faithfully each night, the moon. What if the moon is not what it seems? Not a cold, silent rock. Not a barren sphere of dust and craters. But something else. Something built. Something designed. This is perhaps the boldest speculation of all, that the moon is a machine of vast, hollowed-out construct of unknown origin, orbiting Earth not by chance, but by intention. In this chapter, we step beyond natural explanations and into the unsettling territory of engineering on a planetary scale. Could the moon be a shell of stone wrapped around chambers of metal? Could it hide great halls, engines, or even intelligence at its core? The seeds of this idea are older than we think. In 1969, NASA's Apollo 12 mission deliberately crashed a lunar module onto the moon's surface. To everyone's surprise, the moon seemed to ring like a bell, for nearly an hour vibrations echoing through its body in a way unlike any solid object. Seismometers left behind by astronauts would later detect similar phenomena, hinting at an interior that is less dense, less homogeneous, perhaps even hollow in part. To engineers and scientists, these tremors were anomalies. To dreamers, they were whispers. What if the moon is not stone all the way through? And if it is not solid, what lies beneath the crust? The hollow moon hypothesis has existed on the fringes of scientific speculation for decades. While mainstream geology explains the moon as a body with a small, dense core and fractured mantle, others suggest that the ringing reveals something deeper. Imagine the moon not as a natural satellite, but as a hollow shell. Its crust rock, dust, and craters is nothing more than camouflage, a skin to conceal a vast interior. Inside could be chambers large enough to hold oceans, machines older than humanity, or voids that defy comprehension. What purpose would such a hollow design serve? A hollow moon could be lighter, easier to place into orbit. It could serve as a gigantic storage vault, a fortress, or a monitoring station. Or it could be a time capsule, a machine left behind for reasons we cannot yet fathom. Consider the possibility that beneath the regolith lies something metallic. Soviet scientists in the 1970s pointed out strange facts about lunar rocks. Some contain elements rare on Earth's crust, but abundant in technology, such as titanium. The surface is unusually hard, resisting craters more than expected. In some impact sites, meteors that should have pierced deep into the crust seem to have bounced, as though striking a hidden layer of armor. If the moon conceals metal beneath its surface, then perhaps it was engineered not only to orbit Earth, but to endure. A machine designed to survive billions of years, long enough to witness the rise of life, the fall of civilizations, and the dawn of spacefaring humanity. It is a staggering thought. Above our heads each night, we may be looking at the most ancient machine in the solar system. If the moon is hollow, what might lie within? Science fiction imagines vast caverns where ships could hide, engines could hum, or archives of knowledge could rest untouched. Some even speculate about artificial gravity chambers, winding tunnels, or cities long abandoned. More cautious minds suggest vault-sealed environments, preserving genetic material, libraries, or technologies meant to be discovered when humanity reached maturity. And then there is a darker possibility. The moon is not empty at all. Its chambers may not be silent. Something could still be there, watching, waiting. The idea of the moon as a machine resonates strangely with ancient myths. In Zulu traditions, the moon was said to be an egg, placed in the sky by two brothers from the stars. In certain Gnostic texts, the moon is portrayed as an artificial body, a reflector of light with hidden purposes. Even modern myths echo this. Some UFO lore claims the moon is a base of operations, a hub for observing Earth. Cold War intelligence reports whispered of strange structures glimpsed in photograph towers, domes, and tracks on the lunar surface that seemed too orderly to be natural. Are these mere illusions, tricks of light and imagination? Or are they glimpses of the machinery beneath the mask? Let us imagine for a moment how such a machine might have been built. To hollow out a world is no small task. It would require technology beyond anything we can conceive. Perhaps the moon was not hollowed, but constructed whole. One possibility: it is a Dyson fragment, a shard of megastructure repurposed as a satellite. Another: it is a shell built around an ancient vessel, an arc drifting through the cosmos until it was parked in orbit around Earth. Think of its layers: a rocky crust, pitted with craters to disguise its origins; a metallic mantle, tough as armor, ringing like a bell; inner vaults vast, silent halls the size of continents. At the core, perhaps, an engine. Whether functional or dormant, such an engine would make the moon not simply an object in orbit, but an artifact. A machine of impossible scale, patiently circling Earth as if on assignment. If the moon is a machine, then we must ask, what is it for? Is it a watchtower, designed to observe and record Earth's unfolding story? Is it a stabilizer, placed to control Earth's tilt and climate, ensuring that life could flourish? Is it a beacon, transmitting signals beyond our reach? Or is it something even stranger, an ark, holding seeds of life, waiting for the right moment to sow them upon the planet below? Each theory carries its own weight, its own disturbing implications. The moon could be a gift, a prison, a monument, or a warning. During the Apollo missions, there were rumors, moments of radio silence, whispers among astronauts that something was out there watching them. Though official records downplay these claims, conspiracy theorists tie them to the hollow moon idea. If astronauts glimpsed something, artificial geometric structures, metallic glints, or impossible echoes, would they have been allowed to speak? Even Carl Sagan, cautious and skeptical, once remarked that natural satellites are the rule in the solar system. But a natural satellite cannot be ruled out. His phrasing was careful, but intriguing. as though he left a door ajar. Perhaps the most staggering implication is not that the moon is artificial, but that it is ancient. If the moon is a machine, it must be billions of years old, older than humanity, older than civilization, older perhaps than Earth itself. It may have drifted across the galaxy, placed in orbit by a civilization so advanced that our species is as ants compared to them. Its builders may be long gone, or they may still exist, scattered among the stars. The moon is not merely a companion to Earth. It is a relic, a machine in the sky, older than our myths, older than our world. Tonight, when you look at the moon, ask yourself, what are you truly seeing? A barren rock lit by reflected sunlight? Or the outer shell of something unfathomable? Perhaps it is both a disguise so perfect we have accepted it as natural, while ignoring the quiet evidence that it is not. The moon may be the greatest machine ever built, a vault in the heavens, a guardian in orbit, a witness to every dawn, every rise and fall of empire, every step humanity has taken on its long road to awareness. If it is a machine, it is not just part of Earth's story. It is the story, and one day we may discover its secret. Until then, the moon hangs silently above us, a lantern in the night, a mystery in orbit, a machine in the sky. For as long as we've gazed at the moon, it has been silent, a pale reflection of the sun's light, hanging in the darkness. At least, that's what we've always believed. But what if the moon has not been entirely quiet? What if on rare occasions it whispers? Faint signals carried on invisible waves, fragments of sound and energy lost in the static of space? In this chapter, we enter one of the strangest corners of lunar mystery, the search for radio signals from the moon. By the middle of the 20th century, humanity was building ears to listen to the cosmos. Giant radio dishes rose from deserts and valleys, tuned not to voices, but to waves, the language of stars, quasars, and pulsars. It was inevitable that scientists would turn their attention to the moon. If the moon were truly barren, it would reflect signals from Earth, but emit nothing of its own. It would be silent. Yet some researchers asked the unsettling question, what if it wasn't? The logic was simple. If any artificial device, be it a transmitter, a probe, or even something buried deep beneath the surface, was hidden on the moon, radio astronomy might catch its whisper. The first results seemed to match expectations. The moon reflected Earth's radio waves back like a dull mirror. Amateur operators sometimes bounced signals off its surface, an early form of moon-bounce communication. But then came anomalies. Occasionally, signals returned distorted in ways that didn't fit normal reflection. Some appeared shifted, as though bent by structures we could not see. Others echoed back longer than expected, as though traveling through hidden chambers before emerging again. Mainstream science chalked it up to atmospheric noise, faulty equipment, or quirks of the lunar surface. Yet the whispers persisted strange enough to make certain observatories listen more closely. During the height of the Cold War, the Soviet Union invested heavily in radio astronomy. Their vast dishes scanned not only deep space, but also our own celestial backyard. Declassified fragments suggest that in the early 1960s, Soviet observatories reported unusual emissions from the moonshort, pulsing bursts not consistent with reflections of Earth's broadcasts. Were they artifacts of crude equipment, errors in calibration, or had something genuinely been detected? To this day, the reports remain shadowy, mentioned in obscure journals and whispered about in conspiracy circles. What stands out is their secrecy. If there was nothing to it, why keep it quiet? The Americans, too, were listening. During the Apollo era, NASA tracked not only spacecraft, but the moon itself. High-gain antennas scanned for interference, noise, or unexpected signals. Publicly, little was said. Official reports focused on the practical, ensuring communication with astronauts, mapping lunar terrain with radar, and bouncing lasers off reflectors left on the surface. But behind closed doors, did engineers and scientists ever stumble upon anomalies? Some insiders later hinted at unexplained spikes in data brief transmissions that had no clear source, appearing to rise from the lunar surface itself. Again, the public was told nothing. Beyond the realm of official science, stories multiplied. Ham radio operators claimed, on occasion, to pick up mysterious bursts when pointing toward the moon. Some described sequences resembling Morse code too structured to be random static. Others insisted they heard faint, rhythmic pulses like a heartbeat in the ether. In UFO literature, entire theories grew around the idea of lunar beacons, devices hidden in craters, transmitting signals not meant for us, but for someone else. A cosmic lighthouse, sweeping silent beams of information into the void. Skeptics dismissed these tales as imagination, coincidence, or interference from Earth-based transmissions. Yet the accounts were persistent, spanning continents and decades. Suppose for a moment that the moon does emit signals. What would be their purpose? One theory holds that they are beacons, simple markers declaring, "Here we are." The moon, in this view, is less a machine and more a signpost, broadcasting coordinates into space for anyone capable of hearing. Another suggests the signals are monitoring relays. They could gather information about Earth, its electromagnetic activity, its biological rhythms, and transmit that data elsewhere. A darker vision imagines the moon as a silent warden, transmitting signals not outward but downward, perhaps influencing consciousness, cycles, or even behavior on Earth. A kind of subtle broadcast woven into the background of life. Mainstream astronomy today acknowledges no artificial signals from the moon. Decades of scans, they say, have revealed only silence. And yet silence itself is interesting. The moon is the closest large body to Earth. If we were to hide something, there would be no better place. And if it were designed not to be obvious, would we expect its transmissions to be clear? Or would they be disguised as noise, buried in frequencies we rarely examine, pulsing only at intervals beyond human patience? We must remember, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The moon may be quiet, not because it is mute, but because we are deaf to the language it speaks. There is something profoundly unsettling about the idea of signals from the moon. If they exist, they challenge everything we believe about our place in the cosmos. They imply intelligence, not just somewhere out there, but right here, in orbit above our heads. Perhaps this is why such claims have been treated with caution, secrecy, or dismissal. The implications are too large, the questions too destabilizing. Is the moon a mirror, reflecting only what we shine upon it? Or is it a transmitter, its own voice hidden in the static? The next time you step outside on a quiet night, look up. Imagine not just the light of the moon, but its sound, an invisible hum drifting across the void, waiting for the right ear to listen. Perhaps the signals are there, hidden in the background noise of the universe. Perhaps they have been there all along. And if so, the greatest message of all may not come from a distant star system, but from the silent companion that has followed us for every step of our journey. The moon may not just reflect our world, it may be speaking. The question is, are we ready to hear? It was the summer of 1976. The Cold War was still raging. The space race had slowed, and the world seemed poised between wonder and paranoia. That year, a Russian magazine called Sputnik published an article that would ripple far beyond the usual readership. It wasn't about politics, or rockets, or even terrestrial science. Instead, it posed one of the strangest possibilities ever printed in a serious publication. What if the moon is not what we think it is? The article was written by Michael Vasin and Alexander Sherbakov, two scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences. Both were respected, both trained in the rational rigor of Soviet research. And yet, what they proposed seemed ripped from science fiction. They titled their idea simply, "Is the Moon the creation of intelligence?" It would become known in the West as the Spaceship Moon theory. Vason and Sherbakov argued that the Moon could be a colossal, ancient, artificial satellite, a world-sized craft placed into orbit around Earth by unknown beings. They pointed to a series of oddities already noted by astronomers. The Moon is far less dense than expected, almost as though it is hollow. Its crust is oddly tough, resisting impacts more than geology alone would suggest. When Apollo missions dropped spent stages onto its surface, the Moon rang like a bell, vibrating for hours. To these anomalies, they added another, the Moon's orbit. Perfectly circular, perfectly poised, unlike most captured bodies in the solar system. Taken together, they said, the evidence suggested engineering, not an accident. The most striking part of their theory was the image it conjured. They imagined the Moon as a kind of cosmic arc, an enormous rocky shell around a vast, hollowed interior. The outer layers, they suggested, could be armored with heavy metals to withstand impacts. Inside might lie machinery, corridors, even vaults of knowledge or technology. The Moon, in this vision, was not a dead companion, but a machine in the sky. The article shocked many. Western newspapers seized on it, publishing excerpts with breathless headlines. Some mocked it as Soviet science gone wild. Others took it more seriously, pointing out that respected scientists rarely indulged such speculation without reason. Mainstream academia, however, dismissed it. The anomalies, they said, could be explained by geology, by imperfect measurements, by coincidence. The Spaceship Moon was filed under fringe speculation, not science. Yet the idea refused to vanish. Part of the theory's endurance lay in timing. In the 1970s, public fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence was at its peak. Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods had sold millions, proposing that ancient visitors shaped human history. Against that backdrop, the suggestion that the Moon itself was a kind of alien artifact felt strangely plausible. It also resonated with older myths, stories of the Moon arriving in Earth's sky, of gods who steered celestial vessels, of watchers who lived above. Vason and Sherbakov seemed to provide a modern scientific gloss on age-old whispers. Their article was peppered with curious details, odd facts that, taken alone, seemed trivial, but together formed a pattern. Lunar craters were often shallow, no matter their size, suggesting impacts were cushioned by something strong beneath. Strange lights had been seen on the Moon for centuries, flashes, glows, moving points of brightness. The distribution of heavy elements seemed inconsistent, as though placed rather than formed naturally. Each fact could be debated, but together they asked, was the Moon really natural, or was it a construct? Nearly 50 years later, the Spaceship Moon theory still lingers. It is cited in documentaries, whispered in conspiracy forums, and revisited whenever another lunar anomaly is discovered. Most scientists still roll their eyes, but even they admit the Moon is strange. Its size, its orbit, its influence on Earth, and its unexplained quirks leave space for speculation. And speculation is powerful. In 1976, Vason and Sherbakov dared to ask the unthinkable. They crossed the invisible line between observation and imagination. Perhaps they were wrong. Perhaps the Moon is just a battered rock, a cosmic accident with a talent for mystery. But perhaps, in their boldness, they glimpsed a fragment of truth. For if the Moon is a ship, then who built it? And why was it left to watch over us? Sometimes, the wildest questions survive because they are the ones we cannot quite silence. Picture Earth without its luminous companion. No glowing disk to guide the night. No silver tides rising and falling. No eclipses to mesmerize ancient eyes. Imagine our world spinning alone, tilted, unstable, untethered. The stars might look the same, but life itself would be different, perhaps even impossible. The moon is more than decoration. It is a stabilizer, a metronome, a shield, and perhaps, if we dare to imagine, a deliberate gift. The Earth tilts on its axis at about 23.5 degrees, and it is this tilt that gives us seasons. Summer and winter, the ebb and flow of agriculture, the cycles of migration, all depend on this gentle lean. But without the moon, simulations show Earth's tilt would wander chaotically over millions of years. It could swing as little as 10 degrees, or tip as far as 45. Such extremes would bring catastrophe. Imagine polar ice caps melting entirely as the planet wobbled toward tropical alignment. Or, conversely, equatorial jungles freezing as the axis lurched the other way. Civilizations would never rise. Life would struggle to adapt. The moon acts like a gyroscope, steadying the spin of our world. Was this balance an accident, or was it secured? Then there are the tides. Twice a day, the oceans breathe in and out, pulled by the moon's gravity. These tides are not just background scenery, they are engines of life. In tidal pools, waves mix nutrients, stir oxygen, and create environments where fragile organisms evolve. Many biologists suggest life step from sea to land may have begun in such pools arenas made possible by the moon. Without lunar tides, Earth would still have ripples caused by the sun's pull, but they would be weak, shallow, and inconsistent. The grand rhythmic heartbeat of the oceans would vanish. Life might have remained microbial. Complex organisms may never have emerged. The moon also slows Earth's rotation. In the distant past, a day lasted only 6 hours. The young Earth spun furiously. Its atmosphere whipped into violent storms, its surface unstable. But the moon's pull has been acting like a cosmic brake, gradually stretching our days to the 24-hour cycle we know. This slower rhythm allowed climates to stabilize, ecosystems to flourish, and creatures to adapt. Without the moon, Earth might still spin too fast for complex life to find balance. And so, our closest neighbor is not just a companion, it is a regulator of time itself. There is another subtle role the moon plays: protection. Its sheer size intercepts some asteroid and comet impacts that might otherwise strike Earth. While Jupiter is the true guardian of the solar system, deflecting many incoming bodies with its massive gravity, the moon still acts as a kind of shield, a smaller sentinel orbiting close. Look at its cratered face. It has taken blows across billions of years, absorbing scars that might have ended life on our planet. When we step back, a pattern emerges. The moon stabilizes Earth's tilt, drives the tides, slows the rotation, shapes the length of our days, and even absorbs some of the impacts meant for us. Each of these effects is vital. Taken together, they form a chain of conditions that made advanced life and human civilization possible. So here is the haunting question. Is this an extraordinary coincidence? Or did someone ensure that Earth had exactly what it needed? Scientists often speak of the Goldilocks zone, the narrow orbital band around a star where a planet can sustain liquid water. Earth sits neatly in that zone. But what if there is another layer, a lunar Goldilocks principle? Consider this. The moon is 1/400th the size of the sun, and about 1/400th the distance from Earth to the sun, a bizarre coincidence that allows perfect eclipses. Its mass is large enough to steady Earth's axis, but not so large that it tears the planet apart. Its distance is close enough to tug oceans, but far enough to avoid ripping them into chaos. It is as though Earth was given exactly the right companion, with exactly the right measurements, at exactly the right time. Coincidence or calibration? To truly grasp the moon's role, imagine it suddenly disappeared. The first change would be the tides collapsing to 1/3 their strength. Coastal ecosystems would unravel. Fisheries would decline. Species that rely on tidal cycles for breeding and feeding would falter. Over millennia, Earth's tilt would begin to wobble. Seasons would lurch unpredictably. climates becoming chaotic, agriculture would be impossible. Civilizations would collapse. The length of our days would stop increasing, freezing Earth's spin in a precarious rhythm. Evolutionary pressures that shaped us would vanish. The moon is not optional. It is integral. Beyond biology, the moon has guided culture. Its steady glow allowed early humans to hunt, travel, and gather after sunset. Its phases became the first clock, inspiring calendars, rituals, and myths. But beneath this cultural influence lies a deeper truth. Without its stabilizing power, there would have been no civilizations to write myths in the first place. We owe our survival not just to the sun that gives us light, but to the moon that gives us balance. Which brings us to the unsettling possibility. What if the moon is not a natural companion, but a designed safeguard? A stabilizer deliberately placed to ensure Earth remained habitable long enough for intelligence to emerge? If so, it suggests not just engineering, but intention. Some external intelligence may have looked at a young, volatile Earth and chosen to give it a stabilizer, a cosmic counterweight, a metronome for oceans, a break for time. The moon, in this reading, is not simply part of Earth's story. It is the reason Earth has a story at all. Mainstream science, of course, does not embrace this speculation. The leading theory holds that a colossal impact early in Earth's history blasted debris into orbit, which coalesced into the moon. From this chaotic birth, a lucky chain of circumstances produced stability. But even here, the word lucky feels insufficient. Out of billions of planets, how many have such perfect companions? Out of countless collisions, how many create exactly the conditions for life? Even skeptics admit, our moon is strange. Perhaps it is all a coincidence. Perhaps life is the improbable flower that blooms in an uncaring universe, and the moon is simply the most convenient rock in the sky. Or perhaps there is design in the balance. Perhaps the moon is not just a silent witness to human survival, but the guarantor of it. A structure, whether natural or artificial, placed where it must be, when it must be, to ensure that life not only appeared, but endured. Every night when we look up, we may be seeing not just a celestial neighbor, but the quiet architect of our survival. The moon may not only reflect the light of the sun, it may also reflect a hidden intention, one written into the very survival of our world. For most of human history, half of the moon remained utterly unknown. The same familiar face greeted our ancestors' eyes, nose, and mouth imagined in its craters, a friendly sentinel keeping watch. But the other side, the far side, was locked away, turned forever from our gaze. It wasn't until the 20th century that humanity finally caught its first glimpse of this hidden hemisphere. And what we saw only deepened the mystery. The far side of the moon has since become a stage for speculation, secrecy, and shadow. Why does the moon always show us the same face? The answer lies in a phenomenon called tidal locking. Over eons, Earth's gravity slowed the moon's rotation until it matched the speed of its orbit. Now, as the moon circles our planet, it turns just enough to keep one hemisphere facing us at all times. To us, it seems natural, but to ancient observers, it must have felt uncanny. A celestial body that refused to rotate like the others? A companion that hid half its form? Even today, there's something unsettling about it. Of all the countless orbits and spins in the cosmos, ours resulted in a perfect alignment of concealment. Was it simply a cosmic accident, or was this veil deliberate? In 1959, the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3 photographed the far side of the moon for the first time. The world held its breath as grainy images developed. What they revealed shocked astronomers. Unlike the near side, with its wide, dark plains known as Maria, the far side was battered with craters, almost entirely devoid of smooth seas. It looked older, harsher, more alien. The asymmetry was baffling. Why would one side be so scarred, the other relatively calm? Scientists proposed theories, differences in crust thickness, ancient impacts, but no consensus has ever fully explained the divide. The moon seemed to be hiding a second personality. There is another peculiarity. The far side of the moon is radio silent. Because the moon blocks Earth's radio noise, the far side is the quietest place in the near cosmos, a perfect shield from human transmissions. Astronomers dream of placing radio telescopes there to listen to the faint whispers of the universe without interference. But for others, this silence sparks darker imaginings. If one wanted to conceal activity, say, a base, a station, a structure, the far side would be the ideal location. Shielded not only from human eyes, but from our very signals. From the moment Luna 3 returned its blurry photos, speculation ignited. Some claimed the Soviets had withheld clearer images, hiding evidence of artificial structures. Later, when NASA orbited the moon during the Apollo program, conspiracy theorists insisted that parts of the far side were edited, altered, or never released. Stories emerged of astronauts glimpsing strange lights or geometric forms just beyond the horizon. Recordings circulated, allegedly capturing hushed radio chatter. We're not alone. NASA, of course, denies such claims. Yet the idea persists, feeding a mythology that something extraordinary lies just out of sight. One of the most persistent theories is that the far side hosts alien installations. The reasoning is simple. If advanced beings wish to observe Earth, they would need a hidden vantage point. The far side of the moon offers exactly that. Whistleblowers, supposed insiders, and fringe researchers have long alleged that ruins, domes, and towers dot the far side's craters. Some go further, claiming active bases operate there with technology beyond human comprehension. Most of these accounts cannot be verified, yet they refuse to disappear, woven into a larger narrative of secrecy surrounding the moon. Over the decades, odd photographs have circulated, blurry shapes on the horizon, sharp angles in the dust, shadows that seem too precise. NASA attributes these anomalies to image artifacts, light contrast, or simple pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns where none exist. But to the suspicious mind, they are breadcrumbs. One infamous case involves a supposed tower stretching kilometers above the lunar surface, spotted in early orbiter photos. Another concerns a hexagonal formation within a far-side crater, too geometric, some argue, to be natural. The debate rages between illusion and revelation. It is important to remember that the far side of the moon was unveiled at the height of the Cold War. Both the United States and the Soviet Union guarded their space data like state secrets. Some suggest this secrecy necessary in the game of superpower rivalry fueled the conspiracy fire. Gaps in public knowledge were quickly filled with speculation, but others argue the secrecy itself may point to something deeper. What better excuse to hide inconvenient discoveries than the fog of Cold War paranoia? Mainstream scientists, of course, dismiss the wilder claims. They see the far side as a fascinating but natural landscape, an ancient surface preserved by billions of years of impacts. Its strange asymmetry, they say, is due to thicker crust and variations in magma flow. Its silence is simply physics. Its shadows are tricks of light. And yet, even some scientists admit the far side is profoundly strange. Why, after billions of years of bombardment, is the near side so different? Why does one hemisphere appear to have been shielded or resurfaced, while the other remains scarred? Mystery, it seems, still lingers. The hidden half of the moon has always haunted the imagination. In myths, the unseen is often where gods dwell, where monsters lurk, where secrets hide. The far side is the embodiment of that archetype, the half of reality we cannot see, the shadow self of the moon. When modern conspiracy theories speak of alien structures or secret bases, they echo much older instincts, the sense that what is hidden must contain truth. The far side becomes not just a place on a map, but a mirror of our deepest suspicions. In 2019, China's Change 4 mission made history by landing a rover on the far side. It was humanity's first close study of this forbidden hemisphere. The mission revealed new data, new samples, and new mysteries. The rover detected substances in the soil that hinted at a complex geologic history. It captured haunting images of landscapes never before seen by human eyes. But for the conspiratorial mind, the Change mission did not end the speculation. It inflamed it. Some ask, what did China really find? What may have been kept from the public? The far side remains fertile ground for suspicion. For thousands of years, the far side of the moon was a perfect metaphor for the unknown, forever hidden, forever unreachable. Now, though spacecraft have mapped it, the mystery has not dissolved. If anything, it has deepened. Its scarred terrain, its eerie silence, its place in human myth and conspiracy, it all combines into something uncanny. Whether it hides alien bases, ancient structures, or nothing but dust and rock, the far side remains a reminder. Not all of reality is visible. Not all of the truth is shared. Perhaps the greatest shadow on the far side of the moon is not cast by mountains or craters, but by the limits of what we are allowed to know. For as long as we have lifted our eyes to the night sky, the moon has been there, watching, glowing, guiding. But now, after a journey through myths, anomalies, and daring theories, we arrive at the most unsettling question of all. If the moon is not a natural satellite, if it was shaped, guided, or even placed, then who put it there? And what does that make us? To entertain the moon as an artifact is to step into vertigo. Suddenly, Earth is not a lonely cradle of chance, but a stage upon which someone or something has intervened. Was the moon a gift? A tool? A device? Or was it a cage, keeping Earth's tides, tilt, and time locked in patterns we barely understand? Whatever the purpose, the implication is chilling. We live under design. Imagine inheriting a house without knowing its architect. You live in its rooms, drink from its wells, rely on its foundations, yet the blueprints are lost. That may be our condition with the moon. Its influence on our survival is undeniable. Without it, Earth's axis would wobble wildly. Our climate would collapse into chaos, and complex life might never have stabilized. Calendars, agriculture, tides, fertility cycles, all of human culture has unfolded beneath its steady rhythms. If the moon is an artifact, then we are beneficiaries of a system built long before our species appeared. But who could have been the builders? Some whisper of an ancient Earth civilization, rising to heights of technology and then vanishing into ruin, leaving behind the greatest monument of all. Others look outward, to cosmic engineers beings who seed life across galaxies, placing moons and planets with deliberate care. And some entertain an even stranger possibility, that the moon is not a relic of the past, but an ongoing instrument, its mechanism still humming in silence, still serving functions we have yet to grasp. In each case, the moon is not a passive rock. It is legacy. Throughout history, myths tell of great ages lost: Atlantis, Lemuria, forgotten continents swallowed by time. What if those myths are not inventions, but fractured memories? Perhaps the moon was central to those vanished ages, a partner in their knowledge. If so, then modern humanity may be a people wandering among ruins they do not recognize. The moon itself would be the greatest ruin of all, not dead stone, but a hollowed relic of a forgotten mastery. Are we then the children of amnesia living beneath the inheritance of builders we no longer remember? There is another possibility, darker still. What if the moon were not placed as a gift, but as a watcher? A vast eye in the sky, silently monitoring the rise and fall of civilizations. Every fire lit, every city built, every signal sent into the void, all unfolding beneath its gaze. Science fiction writers have long speculated about sentinel devices, objects placed by advanced beings to awaken when a species reaches a certain threshold. Could the moon itself be such a sentinel, disguised as nature's ornament? If so, then humanity's recent leap into space might not be discovery, it might be triggering. And yet, for all our questions, the moon remains silent. No message carved into its surface. No unmistakable machinery revealed. No beacon answering our probes. Perhaps its silence is intentional. Perhaps we are meant to wonder, to sense that we are not alone, without ever receiving certainty. Or perhaps silence itself is the answer. The builders are gone, their reasons forgotten, their artifacts left adrift. We are squatters in an abandoned estate, mistaking its functions for the laws of nature. If the moon is artificial, even in part, then the foundation of human knowledge trembles. Our histories shrink into small dramas upon a stage set by unknown hands. Our sciences, though powerful, might be measuring tools without ever recognizing the architect. We pride ourselves on progress, yet perhaps every step we take has already been guided by a framework older than history. The moon becomes not just a celestial body, but a reminder of how little we know. If we are indeed inheritors, what responsibility falls upon us? To study, to preserve, to uncover the truth? Or to tread lightly, lest we awaken something not meant to stir? Perhaps inheritance is not just privilege, but a test. If the moon was placed to guide, maybe it was also placed to watch whether we are worthy of knowing its full purpose. Our inheritance may carry both blessing and judgment. What if we are not the first? What if the moon remembers civilizations before ours, rising, flourishing, and falling, each under its gaze? If so, then we are not pioneers, but descendants, not original, but recycled. The moon becomes a witness, holding secrets we may never be allowed to read. And yet, perhaps the truth is meant to haunt us. The sense that we are heirs to something vast and ancient may be the spark that drives us forward, urging us to reach beyond our limits. Tonight, when you look at the moon, see it not as a simple satellite, but as a question. A question carved into the sky itself, visible to every eye that has ever lived. Who placed it there? Why does it shape our lives so perfectly? And are we the first to walk beneath its glow? Or simply the latest? The moon does not answer. It only shines. Perhaps that is the greatest inheritance of all, not certainty, but wonder. For as long as it hangs above us, the moon whispers a silent reminder. We are part of a story far older, far deeper, and far stranger than we know. And whether gift, machine, or monument, it leaves us with a haunting thought. We are not merely living on Earth. We are living under the legacy of the moon. And so, our journey ends where it began, beneath the quiet glow of the moon. We've explored its riddles, its myths, its strange harmonies with life on Earth. Perhaps it is only rock and dust. Or perhaps it is something far more, an ancient construct, a silent watcher, a gift from forgotten hands. The truth remains hidden, but the mystery itself endures, calling us to look upward, to question, to wonder. Because in the end, the moon is not just above us. It is within us, woven into our survival, our stories, and our search for meaning. And maybe, just maybe, that was always its purpose.